Call the meeting to order. This is meeting of February 22nd. We'll note that all commissioners are present. First item of business is the order of business. I'm aware of two additions to the order of business under the timetable agenda. At 5:45, we're going to add Centennial Homes, and then under tab 4, we'll add item E, which is a front entrance issue regarding our museum. Are there any other alterations to the agenda? If not, would there be a motion to approve the agenda with the two items that I've added?
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have the motion, the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? Hearing none, is there?
President, I'll move for approval of the consent agenda.
We have the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. We'll go to tab 4, item A, the December financial report. Mrs. Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I'd like to highlight a few items from the 2010 financial report. You have received two updated pages of the report this evening that reflect the transfer from the 0.5% sales tax to the Development Impact Fee Fund. This transfer was approved by the Commission at the December 20th meeting. We will begin with the general fund report. Our property taxes equal $3 million for 2010, and were 100% collected compared to budget. Our other taxes and fees was 84% collected compared to budget. This includes the financial institution tax, which is 50% less than last year due to the national financial crisis. The intergovernmental revenues include revenues we receive from the state and local governments, such as highway distribution tax and oil production tax. This line is 110% collected compared to budget. In September, we received an annual payment of $500,000 in oil and gas production tax money. Our licenses, fees, and services include such things as building permit revenue and oil royalties, and is 107% collected compared to budget. Our building permit revenue increased 65% over last year. This category also includes our municipal court fines, which increased 9% over last year. Our sales of city lots and equipment shows $1,270,000 of city lots were sold in 2010. Our total general fund revenues equal $9.9 million through 2010, and were 103% collected compared to budget.
Mrs. Johnson, I have a question just for clarification, but the previous legislative session, the $500,000 was a special allotment to the city of Dickinson, and I think it's only committed through the current biennium.
I don't believe it had a sunset, but there is legislation that I believe would change it now.
Yeah, I expect it to be changed, but I didn't remember if it was an ongoing commitment or if it was just for the 2 years of the current biennium.
In our general fund expenses, these are broken down by groups, which include general government, which includes administration, court, finance, IT, assessing, and buildings and grounds, and is 96% expended compared to budget. Our public safety, which includes police and fire, is 98% expended compared to budget. Our engineering and streets is 102% expended compared to budget, with the overage due to snow removal costs. Our cultural services includes museum and forestry, and is 81% expended compared to budget. Our contingency and reserve includes the West River Community Center Major Maintenance Reserve, and a contingency that includes the conference room remodel, Channel 19 upgrades, polygraph equipment and training, and our 20% share of the regional transit building. The total general fund expenses equal $9.2 million through 2010 and were 97% expended compared to budget. In our enterprise funds, our total enterprise fund revenues equal $7.7 million through 2010 and were 100% collected compared to budget. Our enterprise fund expenses together total $5.7 million through 2010 and were 105% expended compared to budget. This overage is due to higher water costs and the wastewater and large wastewater pump repairs that we were unbudgeted. Our large negative cash balance in our wastewater fund is due to several capital projects that will be financed that include the third cell improvements, the Lincoln Lift Station, and the wastewater plant treatment upgrades. In October, we received our first reimbursement from the SRF loan for the third cell project, which totaled $570,000. We will be combining the water and wastewater funds in 2011. In our sales tax reports, in our 1% sales tax fund, we received $278,000 of revenue in December, which is up 21% for the year. Our expenses include $800,000 paid towards the Badlands Activity Center and $609,000 paid towards job creation and senior programs. This slide also shows the sales tax refund that was paid to the state due to the overpayment of local taxes by a single taxpayer. In our 0.5% sales tax, we received $139,000 of revenue in December, which is also up 21% for the year. Our expenses include $683,000 paid towards the West River Community Center bond, a $100,000 transfer to the West River Community Center Major Maintenance Reserve, $281,000 for property tax relief, and a $1 million transfer to the Development Impact Fee Fund. The sales tax refund line item shown here is also due to the overpayment of local taxes. In our hospitality tax, our revenues collected are up 16% over last year. Our expenses include $118,000 paid to the CVB for the Special Events Grant and their subsidy, and $140,000 transfer for museum expenses, and $250,000 towards the Badlands Activity Center. In our occupancy tax breakdown, this shows our revenue and expenditures are up 30% for the year. All occupancy tax revenues collected, minus a small admin fee, are paid to the CVB monthly. And in our street projects report, we received $2.2 million in revenues, and we expended $1.7 million towards street projects through 2010. The transfer from the 50% share of the 1% sales tax totaled $1.6 million this year, which is a $176,000 increase over last year. Those are some of the highlights. Are there any questions?
Any comments or questions for Mrs. Johnson? If not, we would need a motion then to approve the report as presented.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just one thing, Mr. President. I find myself, as I look at these reports every month, wondering what the 2011 budget numbers are. In other words, as we see 2010 unfold and see how we are coming out in 2010, I find myself wanting to be reminded where we ended up with the 2011 budget.
We will be, when we do the first presentation of the financials for 2011, which will be January and February together, we could certainly do a full year's budget included with those columns.
I realize we'll see it from now on.
Right.
I find myself the last 2-3 months, as we can see the year end, see the year take shape, wondering how it compares to what we did with our 2011 budget. Might just be a consideration for the
Anything
future.
we could add?
You did distribute the 2011 budget book, I don't know, 30 days ago, 45
Yes.
days ago. I would suspect that we were conservative on our revenue projections, especially with the sales tax. I think the 2011 projections are less than we collected in 2010. Now, we had a very significant growth experienced here in 2010 of, in round numbers, 20%. So it's hard to say what 2011 would be. I think, you know, in total, we were pretty close here in 2010. Our revenues, I think I heard you say the general fund revenues were 103% of budget. So that's, you know, within 3%, especially in an environment like this, I think that's pretty good. And your expenses came in at 97%, and that is really good, especially in an environment like this with, you know, we've had some harsh winters. We're certainly feeling the impact of the energy development in the area, and to keep our expenditures in total within budget, I think, is very good. And so we actually grew the general fund, which is probably a good thing for us, because I believe in 2011, it's likely we're going to be amending our budget expenses or increasing them, just because, again, of some of the impact that we're seeing. So we're in a good position, I think, to deal with what's in front of us. We're going to still need some help from the state legislature in case any of them are listening, but we're in a good position. So I can't remember, did we get a motion to?
We did.
And motion, and we have the second. Is there any other discussion? Not, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll go to the timetable agenda. There's a 5:20 item. Mrs. Johnson has that item, so I'll let you introduce it.
Thank you, President Johnson. We see 2 or 3 abatement requests like this on average per year. Our assessors use a mass appraisal system to appraise property. If a property adds on or remodels, a building permit is required, and that would notify the assessors that a change has occurred. If there is damage to a home, such as after the tornado or water damage, that condition would not necessarily be known by our assessors. In both the abatement tonight and the recent abatement we had a couple weeks ago, the condition of the home was lower than we had assessed it at, and thus required a reduction in value. When Mr. Taraba purchased his property, the water damage in the basement due to landscaping was an issue. He removed a sizable patio and a deck to replace drain tile around the house. He has also removed some of the finish in his basement to repair a portion of the foundation wall. Mr. Taraba's 2010 value included the patio, deck, and finish in the areas of the basement which have been removed. Therefore, the value in 2010 should be decreased to $132,800. We are recommending that the City Commission accept Mr. Taraba's request for a decrease in his property valuation from $149,100 to $132,800 for 2010. Are there any questions?
Who comes up with the dollar figure, the new assessed value?
The assessor's office,
Went out and...
right, they actually went to the property and reviewed everything.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion regarding this item?
I'll move we approve the request.
Is there a
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Discussion. There's no discussion, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So the motion carries. It's almost 5:30, so I think we'll go to our 5:30 timetable agenda item, and that's to hear an update on St. Joseph's Hospital and Health Center by their administrator and CEO, Reed Raymond. So welcome, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you, President Johnson. Appreciate the opportunity and the time. I guess the purpose of this meetings and these quarterly updates is to provide some transparency between the hospital and the city, and we're really working towards that in the future. So as I'm presenting this information, if there's any additional information that you'd like to hear in the future, please let me know. At the end of the first 7 months, our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 31st. As of January 31st, our net operating income is 79.5% over budget. We're doing very, very well. We're having another very successful second year. Our average daily census is currently at 16. Last year, our average daily census was 17.4. One of the concerns the community had, going back to critical access status, was if 25 beds would be enough. And as you can tell, we're at an average daily census of about 16. At the present time, we've had 7,827 emergency room visits compared to 7,059 last year. We've had an increase of about 125 emergency room visits per month. We have added one emergency department physician, and we're in the process of adding another to bring that to 5 full-time physicians. We've only had 188 surgical outpatient visits versus 561, and that's due to the loss of our orthopedic surgery. So that is an area that we're looking to increase upon. And finally, we have a total of 335 employees compared to 349 employees last year. We still have some entry-level positions available, but we have not been hit as dramatically by the oil boom as we anticipated. So that's my brief report. If you have any questions, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Raymond, so your average patient seen a month is roughly 600?
Yeah, roughly.
7,200
That's
per
correct.
day?
Our average patient seen per month would be about 480 to 500,
Okay.
about 16 per day.
What percentage of those come through your emergency room?
Roughly right now, we're admitting probably 20 to 30% to our emergency department.
So they're seeing a lot of people come through them.
We are seeing a lot of people come to our emergency department, yeah. We've had an increase in the amount of family practice positions in the community. We've had, Dickinson Clinic actually has added 3 positions. And even with those additional positions being added, we've still seen an increase in the volume of people coming through. A lot of it's, we do have some significant trauma that we get. We do have some people who cannot afford the copay at the clinics that come through, but for the most part, they are true emergencies.
Thank you.
Can you expand a little bit on your efforts to recruit physicians to the community, and, is it, how difficult is that? From what I read, it sounds like there's a growing doctor shortage throughout the nation, and so we're competing with many other institutions for staff. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it is very difficult to recruit, mainly because there is a lack of young people going into medicine. It's become more and more difficult to get into the field of medicine. The one thing the healthcare reform bill did not do was open up additional slots for students to go become physicians. Actually, the only difficult thing about recruiting is getting them to Dickinson. If we can get them to Dickinson and familiarize them with the area, we seem to do very well. It's just that initial sell of getting them to come. And as always with recruitment, it's always the spouse. So the first thing we try to go to out and look for people who are familiar, mostly with western North Dakota, Wyoming, and eastern Montana. We've had a very difficult time even recruiting eastern North Dakota or Minnesota graduates back to western North Dakota. There seems to be a cultural difference there. With the implementation of electronic health records and some of these things that are being mandated, we're going to see even a bigger turnover in the amount of physicians. More physicians are going to choose to quit other than change the way that they do business. So it's becoming more and more difficult to recruit to the area. We do have a strong relationship with the Rural Health Network, and they do connect us with more and more young people. We're fortunate in Dickinson to have quite a few young people who've chosen medicine as a career, and so we are in touch with all those people throughout the time that they enter medical school. Our biggest challenge right now is we've actually started to sign up medical student prospects as soon as they enter the residency program. So we may have physicians signed up to come to the area, but they're not going to be eligible to come out for another 3 to 7 years. So that's going to be very difficult in that time frame to maintain enough physicians for our area.
If I may, what's being done to replace Dr. Kovacs's practice?
We have a number of searches in place right now, and actually we're looking at possibly entering into a partnership with an existing orthopedic firm. Hopefully we'll be able to announce something about that in the next couple of days, actually. We tried to recruit independently, but with a physician with Dr. Kovacs's skill, what has happened is even within the field of orthopedics, everybody specializes. And Dr. Kovacs was a general orthopedic surgeon. In other words, he was able to to do a variety of different procedures. And what has happened now in the world of orthopedics is they're specializing into hands, feet, shoulders, different things, sports medicine, and it really limits. We need more of a general orthopedic that can do all of those things. So it's been a very difficult recruit for us, and so we've entered into some partnerships with some existing entities, and hopefully they're going to help us find somebody. So it's very difficult. It's a very fine position and very difficult to fill that spot.
With some of your biggest financial obstacles behind you, what's keeping you awake at night now?
I think everything you're talking about is keeping me awake. Physicians, partnerships, trying to establish relationships with the existing clinics in the community, trying to become closer, more interdependent in what we do, trying to work closer together, and trying to come up with some common goals for the community and all of Southwest North Dakota, so we're all kind of marching in the same direction. I think just right now what's really keeping us awake is the lack of ICU nurses. Right now, one of our lower areas is finding intensive care trained nurses. It's been very difficult to find nurses in that area. So right now, I think we're looking for at least 4. So that's one of the areas that's been very difficult to find. So with healthcare, it's something new every day. So I'm awake most nights.
The city has invested a great deal of money in the recreation center, community center, and it's been returned many times over by the recruitment aspect that that building has done for not only residents but businesses and such. We've also invested a great deal of dollars in the BAC. Certainly that has some recruitment aspects to our college and such. I'm curious, CHI acquired land not long ago. Is there a building update you can provide to the commission and to the people watching?
There's really not a building update right now, but we are moving forward with the site plan, and we are moving forward with looking at some other things that we can do to get the land more prepared. Working with CHI, they have over 100 facilities, and much like we purchased the land when we thought it was going to take some time, CHI could come in and say, hey, we've got the money for you tomorrow. So we're going to move forward and become as ready as we can be to start the project as soon as they give us the go-ahead. So, and we're doing all we can now to help educate CHI into really what's happening in southwestern North Dakota, because I can tell you we're diametrically different than what's happening at all the rest of their hospitals. Williston and us are so different in our economy, so we need to do a better job in educating them as to what's happening here. So.
Anything else? Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate the update and look forward to you returning again.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
We'll go down to the non-timetable agenda, tab 4 again, item B, North Side annexation. Mr. Colling, are you introducing that item?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. The item in your book is a resolution pertaining to the annexation of area north, in the north part of Dickinson. As you know, this area was annexed back in October. We held a hearing on that. The annexation resolution itself was recorded in January. There is litigation currently pending on that, and the annexation resolution before you is an effort to clear up any lingering ambiguity with respect to the status of the property. We have a number of developers up in that north end who are proceeding on the basis that they will be connected to city water and sewer and other city services. And what we would like to do is have the commission pass this resolution annexing the same property that was annexed in the prior proceeding, just to clear up any lingering ambiguity as to the status of that property. We have a hearing on the landowner's motion for an injunction that is coming up in April. We feel very confident of prevailing at that hearing, but even in the event that we should prevail, it may take upwards of 12 months before the plaintiff landowners have the right to litigate their claim and before that claim is resolved. So this resolution would clear up the ambiguity of the property within that time period. Be happy to address any questions you might have.
Do you have a number for the resolution?
This would be Resolution 04-2011.
Any comments or questions by
Mr.
Commissioners?
President.
Mr. Jackson?
I absolutely think we should do this. We may, excuse me, we may find out in the long run that it wasn't necessary, but I think we need to make sure development can occur on a timely basis up there. I do have concerns. I know that some of the property owners in that area had concerns when we did this before, that communication wasn't quite what it should be, and I have some concerns that we should perhaps be communicating with those property owners again before we do this. I realize this is more formality. It's not a new thing. It shouldn't be news to anybody. But I'm just, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I just wonder if we shouldn't be doing some direct communication with those property owners, explaining what we're doing, and do this 2 weeks from tonight.
Commissioner Jackson, we do have a letter penned. It's ready for disbursement. We did ask the county for land ownership and contact information because some of that land has changed in between the last time we went through this process. As soon as we receive those addresses, that letter can go out immediately. And it would do exactly what Attorney Coling mentioned tonight. It would just reiterate that the confidence in the current process is there, but in case, for whatever reason, we can move through this process to facilitate the annexation as soon as possible in the spring so that construction could happen in that undeveloped area. We also are on the County Commission's agenda for their meeting in March.
Do you have the addresses and names from the county now?
No, I don't believe we do. We've asked for that information. It wasn't receipted, so we reiterated that request, and I believe we'll have that yet this week.
My thought is, however well-founded that criticism was that we received the last time about the communication, that we should try to avoid that second time around.
Sending the letters out registered this time?
It was not our intent to send them out registered. That does not guarantee receipt. It just,
Sure.
so that was not our intention.
What does it do to the process, Mr. Coling, if we give the city staff 2 more weeks to mail these letters?
Mr. President, Commissioners, I think from our legal, strictly as a legal question, that does not concern me at all. I have confidence in the process that we have used to date with regard to the annexation of this property. So this resolution is merely intended to clean up the ambiguity that might be there if the plaintiffs pursue their claim all the way through trial, which may be 12 months down the road. Another 2 weeks for us to send out those letters and engage in some more communication with the county and with the landowners themselves would not concern me at all.
There is one other consideration, and that is that I suspect there are parcels being sold as we speak up there. So the ownership that we dealt with 3-4 months ago, or whenever that was, will probably be different when it comes to this second annexation process. And we do need to consider that. Now, how much different in 2 weeks it will be, probably not much.
I'm okay with not acting on this tonight and giving, the staff 2 more weeks to get the letters out.
I'd be in favor of it also, if we get the information out to them.
Now, I wasn't at the previous meeting, but this was tabled. The fact that it's on the agenda here now, Mr. Coling, do we have to have another tabling motion, or what do we have to do here?
No, there's no need to table the motion. You can let the minutes reflect that no action was taken on the matter, and that is
Okay.
sufficient.
Is that okay with all the commissioners? Mr. Lamblum?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we won't take any action on it then, and we'll carry it over to the agenda 2 weeks from now. It's 5:45. We have Centennial Homes on our timetable agenda. Mr. Kessel or Mr. Soren, are either one of you introducing this item?
President Johnson, City Commissioners. We did receive a request from Centennial Homes to allow Southwest Water to provide water to them, even though the lot they're looking at is located within the city limits. They did hand out a packet of information prior to the meeting, and when you look at the drawing that's in that packet, it shows the area that they're talking about, which is on the east side of town. It's on the east side of the interstate where we don't have water and sewer services. In order for those services to be provided, we would have to bore underneath the interstate and to get it to the east side and provide it to that lot. That is why they're here tonight to request that we allow Southwest Water to provide water to them, as well as a septic system and drain field for their sewer. It's my understanding, in visiting with the owner of the property today, they're looking at putting an office building along with some display models on this site. One of the concerns that I do have, obviously, with this is it is one lot. We're moving that direction. Do we want to allow Southwest Water to come in and provide that service? However, with that being said, it is a large expense for one lot to undertake, and that's the only lot we have on that side of the interstate without the future development or annexation of property in that area. And it's probably not, if we were to provide that, we'd want mains put in to provide a broader range of service, and it would not be, I think, the developer of that lot's responsibility to carry that. It should fall to a greater land area because it would ultimately serve that. So there is a challenge there that's in front of us with how we would handle that. We did do something similar with the county shop a few years back when they built the shop. There's a large drainage ditch that created a problem, and we did allow Southwest Water to tie in and provide water service to them until the city has services in that area. So that's the request that's in front of you tonight, is they're looking to move forward with the purchase of this with the request that Southwest Water be able to come within the city limits and provide them water.
I have a question regarding the county building. Do we provide sewer to the county building?
They've actually got an agreement with Baker Boy and tie into the force main that Baker Boy has that comes into
Okay,
town.
so, but they are on the city system?
Yes.
I don't recall exactly when we did this, but I know we annexed this land a few years back. It might have even been before your time, Mr. Soren. And the owner, the developer at that time, was looking at doing a truck stop, and it made sense for that truck stop to be inside the city limits. When they changed their mind, the land is just sat vacant. My question really is, and I talked with the owner of the land this morning, does it still make sense to have this piece of land within the city limits? And we're going to be experts on annexation here, I know. But, Mr. Colling, is there a process, I assume there's a process to de-annex land also?
Mr. President, there is a process to exclude property from city limits, provided that it hasn't been previously platted. I don't know the status of this property, whether it's platted property or not, but we could de-annex the property, assuming it hasn't been platted.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering if, I don't know, have you thought about that at all?
Well, it was certainly a discussion we had today. I do believe it is platted. You know, one of the challenges is certainly to the north of Highway 10 is all open on that interchange, which is another area that potentially could become a valuable piece of property for development in the near future, and there's a lot of building going that direction. There's the industrial park that's currently there. If the interest is potentially there to continue with our annexation and looking at development in the future, you know, that's our starting point, I guess. Certainly, as we're starting the comprehensive plan process, and, you know, hopefully that's going to help us answer some of those questions, but that doesn't help us tonight.
Well, that's a very diplomatic way of telling the mayor that's probably a bad idea.
He did it well, didn't he? I can do it less diplomatically if you'd like.
Well, Mr. Kessel usually does that.
Mr. President, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, but there certainly is a potential for a significant development in this area. Industrial, commercial areas really benefit from municipal water systems from a fire standpoint. Looking long-term, you know, maybe nothing else will happen, but I'd hate to see us back away from the annexation. I think the request isn't unreasonable. You know, it's just going to be too expensive to do anything now. I don't know if we can get some kind of an agreement with Southwest Water so that should the day come that we have water and sewer on the other side of the interstate, there's not an issue with providing municipal water service, I would hope.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can do. I believe there's a mechanism in place that says we have to allow them to provide within the city limits, no different than if we were to go outside. I believe we have to get their approval to serve outside of the city limits as well. Likewise, with this person, I think there would be, or company, some mechanism that we would want in place, a development agreement, for lack of a better term, that states when we bring it over, they're willing to tie in, and, you know, so I think we could do that in two places, along with the property owner and Southwest Water.
I think that's a good idea.
Do we establish that as a condition then to the approval tonight?
Mr. Colling, maybe you could give us some guidance. I'm kind of sensing that we want to approve Southwest Water here, but at the same time have a development agreement. Do you have an idea or a suggestion on a proper motion here?
Well, if it is the intention of the commission to grant access to Southwest Water, I think Mr. Soren and I can get together and we can craft an agreement with the property owner, with Southwest Water, with the necessary provisions in there, and perhaps have that back for your approval next meeting.
Okay, is there a representative from Centennial Homes here? If you don't mind, if you could come to the podium and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Michael Evans. I'm the CEO of Centennial Management. We're a corporation headquartered in Aberdeen, South Dakota. We have been there 42 years in the manufactured and modular home business. By way of a very short introduction, we operate 7 retail sales centers in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana. In North Dakota, last year, in Williston and our office in Bismarck, we delivered just under 300 homes to the region here, including some homes in Dickinson. We're hoping to set up a retail center here that will employ probably 12 or 15 people. We have 120 people in our company right now. And our request has been laid out as clear as it possibly could be. We would have no opposition to hooking onto city services once they're within our property or going by our property. It's just simply cost prohibitive right now to try to do that with city sewer and water. Our office will consist of probably 3 people, 4 people at the most. We need a very minimal septic system. We have about 10 acres of land to put the septic and drain field in. Of course, we'll have that engineered by local engineers to whatever codes we need to meet. I would entertain any other questions you might have.
I think the question is, sounds like we're willing to do this, but we have to craft a development agreement, and then we would act on that in 2 weeks. Is that acceptable to you? You don't
Yeah.
really have a choice, but, you know.
I was weighing my options there. No, I understand your need for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if time was more pressing, we could, craft the agreement and schedule a special meeting between now and our next regularly scheduled meeting, but if we don't have to do that,
If the snow was melted and I could get equipment in there, I might request that of you, but I can live with that.
okay. Well, then, if your company works with the city attorney here and Southwest Water or city engineer, hopefully we can get that crafted and back on the agenda in 2 weeks.
And that would include the septic system also.
I'm not an expert on septic systems, so.
Yeah, I think we would include water, sewer
In
with
that
that agreement, yeah.
So,
Thanks for adding us to the agenda this evening.
okay.
Now, is this for sales, or we're going to be doing some construction at the,
Just a sales office.
Just a sales
And
office?
And a model home display center.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you for being here, and welcome to Dickinson. So,
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
I move we approve the request as submitted, and also that city attorney work up a development agreement with the individual.
I don't know that we need a motion, because we don't have to act on this tonight until we have the agreement.
We will intend to bring an agreement back, first meeting in March for your formal approval, if that is sufficient for the commission.
Yeah,
And hold on to then.
we can, so we're good there, thank you. Let's go.
Excuse me, do we need any concurrence from Southwest Water on this?
Yes, Commissioner Levelin will contact Southwest Water and make sure that they're able to provide service, and most likely make them a party to the agreement as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We'll go to item 4C, which is a Wells Fargo purchase agreement for downtown land, and Mr. Kessel, are you introducing that?
Certainly, President Johnson. As I reported on this land purchase at the last commission meeting, is land directly north of the building referred to as the old Elks Building, the one that Granville Brinkman is renovating at this time. It would include all of the land then up to the building that is on the north side of that block. I believe that's currently occupied by Attorney Mouse and his firm. The agreement itself is for $4 a square foot, which equates to $98,700. The purchase agreement before you is the one that we typically use and has been reviewed by Attorney Coling and approved by him. We would take possession as soon as you agree to the purchase agreement and the terms can be executed. The intent would be to use that space as a parking lot, and it would be engineered as such, and hopefully we'll come to you with a request to do so in the near term.
Okay, you've heard the introduction. Are there comments or questions regarding this item?
And the proceeds to purchase this are going to just come from the land sales that we've already had in the 1.2 million that we sold in land, basically.
Thank you, Commissioner Oltmann, that's exactly correct.
So no new money to fund this, it's just basically a land swap. We've sold some, we'll buy some.
Yes, no property taxes will be used in that purchase, nothing of that nature. You're correct.
This purchase would not include those two part lots immediately to the west of the Maus Nordsven law offices.
That is also correct, Commissioner Jackson. That law firm is purchasing those directly from Wells Fargo.
And a cleanup and everything from the fire, the land's in a position where when we take it over, we have nothing to do except develop it how we want to develop it, right?
That would be correct. Yep.
I have to ask this question. Is it obvious that we need a parking lot there? I know we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about parking downtown. But is it obvious that we need a parking lot in that location?
That's certainly the intentions today. The final disposition, we all hope that Mr. Brinkman follows through with the construction timeline that he's provided to us. There is an outside chance that we may be the proud owners of that building if he does not. Certainly, having the land with that building would be better for us in terms of development or having another contractor proceed with finishing or completing that land in that eventuality. We have had a offer on the land we own across the alleyway. So if we would take advantage of that offer, that would remove that land from its current parking condition. But certainly, the choice to develop it as a parking lot is one we don't have to make today.
Mr. Jackson, I think the Elks Building will be developed. It will be completed, whether Mr. Brinkman does it or the city does it or another developer comes in and gets it done. I think that lot is strategically located. The building will need parking. And I think, there's a possibility that someday there could be a small parking ramp there that may be tied directly to that building and then leased to the people who are tenants there. Plus, it might provide parking for others. So I think it's a very strategic location. If it turns out that it doesn't need to be used for parking, I think the city at some time later might feel free to sell it for some other use or certainly see another building developed there. But I think because it's located right adjacent to the Elks Building, I think there could be a need for indoor parking at some date, some future date.
Mr. President?
Mr. Bowen?
One thing in the agreement that I did want to point out to you that pertains to possible sale in the event it's not developed as a parking lot. Wells Fargo did request a deed restriction in the agreement that the property would not be sold by the city for use as a financial services institution. It cannot be sold to another bank or a financial company. And that restriction would exist for 5 years after the date of the sale.
Oh, so that has a 5-year sunset then? Okay.
That's pretty standard.
I think in real estate, it's fairly standard. We haven't done that as a city on property that we've purchased in the past, but industry-wide, that's fairly standard.
I don't think, we're not looking at this purchase as one that we'd turn around and flip. I mean, this, I think, is again, a strategic location and could fit very well with the Elks Building.
So this property abuts right up to the law office itself?
Correct. The southern side is adjacent to the Elks, and the northern side is abuts to the attorney or law firm.
Was there any interest on behalf of the law firm to acquire any of that stuff to the south then?
Not that I'm aware of. They expressed an interest in the land to the west of them, but not to the south of them.
free parking.
And Sean, you haven't looked at any budgeting for paving or improvements or anything like that to this point?
No, Commissioner Oltmans, we haven't. We do expect that we will bid the parking lot on the south side of Allard across from the depot there, and that will provide us with a good number in terms of what it would take to pave this lot. In fact, we might even get better pricing if we do them at the same time, if that's our choice.
Anything
President,
else?
I'll move for approval of the purchase.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have the motion to approve and the second. Other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Okay, we have a 6 o'clock agenda item, and that's an update from the Western Edge Pool Committee, and I think Stephanie Rieger and James Kramer will be making those presentations. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, for giving me a moment of your time. Back in July, shortly after a very warm day, I approached the Dickinson Parks and Rec and asked them if they needed help getting an outdoor pool, and I volunteered to assist them with that. So that's how this committee came about. There's about 12 people on our committee, and this presentation this evening is called Finish the Dream, and it's by the Dickinson Western Edge Pool Committee. Okay. Dickinson is a community in need. As you know, the population of Dickinson is growing at a rapid pace, and Dickinson's residents currently have little or no access to outdoor swimming facilities. In August, we had a city forum, just a community forum, and approximately 40 attendees showed up for that. And at that forum, we handed out some surveys. With the surveys that we received, we actually received back 372 surveys. And of those, 95% of the surveys were in favor of an outdoor swimming facility. 3% were not in favor, and 2% weren't sure if they were in favor or not. Out of all of the surveys, 35% of those children didn't have any children, or 35% of those residents don't have any children at this point in time. So they're looking to expand their families. 56% of them had children between the ages of 0 and 12, and 7% of the survey said that they would like to bring their grandchildren to an outdoor swimming facility. Also, Dickinson's previous 2 outdoor pools were historical parts of our community and focal points to our recreational programs. Projects like these are essential to attract tourism and to retain families, business owners, and community leaders. Here's some of the questions that have been asked, and I have some answers for you. Where? The original plans of the West River Community Center included an outdoor pool as a desired component. The existing site allows for use of ample parking and utility infrastructure that will defray construction and operating costs. How's it going to be done? It's going to be a community effort. The total cost of the project is expected to be around $2.8 million. And who's going to do this? The Western Edge Pool Committee is going to coordinate the fund drive for the outdoor pool. Dickinson Parks and Recs will operate and maintain the facility when it's opened. These are some surrounding communities that currently have outdoor facilities, and these are also the places where our community members are going to go swimming.
Once we get to the design phase, there's going to be two words that I think we're going to use a lot. And those of you who are involved with the West River Community Center will remember those words. They were wow and fun. One thing we won't want to do is replicate the 2 pools that we used to have. The 4-foot square pools just aren't fun with kids anymore. Kids want to have zero-depth, interactive water features that parents can come along and enjoy with. So There will be some features that will be duplicated from within the West River Community Center, such as the slides up in the far right, top right, as well as the zero depth. Those are two features that, you find about in every pool, new pool. Outside of that, we want to get creative and not duplicate things that we already have inside the community center. So you may see, like in the top middle, a water mushroom or some climbing components, maybe a climbing wall, such as in the middle bottom. You'll also definitely want to see some patio areas, some sun areas, and some shade structures. But the one thing that, again, that we're going to want to do is create an outdoor environment that families want to come and partake in. The one thing that we've heard since Stephanie has started this whole thing in our community is, there's been some debate. We have a beautiful indoor facility now. Why do we need another pool? And the one thing that I keep hearing from the public is, in North Dakota, we need to take advantage of those 3 months of nice weather that we do have. And there are people who, obviously want to be outside and take part in outdoor aquatics. As far as the site and the location, as we were early in the design process of the West River Community Center, an outdoor pool was always discussed as a potential component. I know this map is a little blurry, but as you can see, right to the south and a little west of where the water slides come outside of the building would be where the outdoor pool potentially could be set out. Now, there are some definite advantages to having it at this site with the utilities very close by, ample parking, as well as you look around the entire area, the community center is the focal point of Leisure Park. Leisure Park is the 48 acres that completely surrounds the community center. Up on the top left, you see the soccer fields. Moving over to your right, the rec center in the indoor ice arena, and down to the bottom right corner, the Mustang baseball fields. And uniquely, they all feed off of each other. And one thing that we've learned is when there is a hockey tournament going on, the West River Community Center will see an influx in daily attendance. When there is a Mustang baseball tournament, the community center definitely sees an influx in people coming through those doors. So, yes, there will be a benefit to the members of the community center as well as the citizens of Dickinson with an outdoor pool at this facility, but also you're going to see a facility that will help the Parks and Recreation Department work on attracting tourism, special events, and tournaments also. And again, it is a unique complex, and when you hear from people across the state, the entire area is the envy of a lot of communities in North Dakota. And it is unique in the sense that all of the different facilities within Leisure Park do feed off of each other and internally promote the community center in general. The tennis edition, which you can see is the square on the right there, right, for those of you wondering how the skate park fits into this whole complex, it actually will be right to the north of the tennis edition. So that will be completed in May also. So another very unique piece to the puzzle here at Leisure Park.
So as I leave, I want to just remind you, let's finish the dream. As we plan for the future, this project will make a difference in the lives of the entire community and the safety of our children. We see families enjoying the opportunity to swim, play, and have fun with one another. In future years, we'll be able to look back and know that our contributions and devotions to this project made a difference in the community. Anybody have any questions for me or James?
Have you had a chance to cash flow it out from when you would get it built to some of the fees that you would charge and what annual maintenance and how that would move forward?
A pool of this size is a little bit unique in North Dakota. Most outdoor pools that you may be accustomed to are standalone outdoor pools, and I'll use Bismarck Elks Pool as an example. That's a standalone outdoor pool. This pool, having the connection to the community center, is completely a different animal. And we haven't pinpointed those options down if it's going to be membership-driven as the community, or an add-on to the community center, or things like that. We do know it's about $150,000 operating budget to maintain a pool of this, this size. And it's no secret, most outdoor pools are a subsidized recreational activity. But again, with the benefit that we have of attaching it to a community center with 4,000 plus members, financially we have I think we'll have an easier time. And the $2.8 million estimate actually was re-estimated in November, so that number is still current, because we've been working on this for about a year or so.
What kind of time frame goal do you have?
We really haven't even set a time frame. Our first goal is to educate the public, go out and start fundraising, and see, where it goes.
More questions? Thank you then for your
Thank
time.
Appreciate the update.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Let's go to item 4D, Beyond Shelter Support Letter and Application. Mr. Kessel, is that your item?
Certainly. Thank you, President Johnson. In your packets, you have a letter from Beyond Shelter. They are here today. Mr. Dan Madler is in the audience. Sorry. Oh, there he is. Okay. And he'd be happy to provide a brief synopsis of their project, and then I can come back and reiterate the request if we like. If I could turn the floor to Mr. Well, I guess if you're going to go.
All right. President Johnson, Commissioners, my name is Blake Strelo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Stark County Housing Authority. I was hired as the Director of the Housing Authority in December of 2008. And while I'm new to the Housing Authority of Stark County, I am not new to the Housing Authority business. I've been doing this for 30 years now, and you could say that low-income housing is my passion. The whole idea of this housing supply and demand problem is nothing new to Dickinson, but it is something that I would like to educate you on what the effects of the housing crunch has on the Housing Authority. Currently, we have a Section 8 program that operates within the county, and the Section 8 program is where my residents go out into the private market, find an apartment that is for rent, and I help subsidize their rent. Now, the trouble is that we have to find apartments within certain rent guidelines, and that is where we have a problem. All the rents, the market rents going in Dickinson right now are so high that my participants in the Section 8 program can't rent them. And so what we're seeing, just for an example, in the year 2010, I issued 96 vouchers. I gave the opportunity of 96 families to go out and find housing in Dickinson. Not a single one of them was able to rent up. My program size has gone from 316 units to 216 in just a matter of years. The trouble with that is, as that program size comes down, my funding decreases, and when my funding decreases from HUD, it's gone forever. I can't get it back. So the Housing Authority, the Board of Directors for the Housing Authority, said, what can we do about this? And I said, really, the only thing that we can do is get into a low-income housing tax credit application. And so what I did is I went out and I found probably what I feel is probably one of the most qualified people in the state to help me put a project together, because that is way out of my level of expertise. And so the Housing Authority Board, along with myself, entered into a contract with Beyond Shelter. Beyond Shelter is a nonprofit development corporation that specializes in low-income housing tax credits. And so I'd like to introduce Dan Madler. Dan Madler is with Beyond Shelter.
Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you for hearing us this evening. As Blake just said and Mr. Kessel said, my name is Dan Madler. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Beyond Shelter. We're a North Dakota nonprofit housing developer. We are, just a little history about Beyond Shelter, what we've been doing. Beyond Shelter was formed in 1999 by the Fargo Housing Authority to help produce affordable housing in the community of Fargo. Since 1999, we've evolved into our own separate individual entity, separate from the Fargo Housing Authority, but our missions are still tied together. Our business model has always been to partner with housing authorities, whether it's in Clay County, Minnesota, Cass County, Stark County, Aberdeen, in Aberdeen, South Dakota, is to basically help the housing authorities in the communities produce affordable housing for their community that basically targets the folks that are qualified for the vouchers. They're your mechanics, your entry-level school teachers, your retail, your service providers. Basically, we're talking about a wage range of $8 an hour to about $17 an hour. We try to target that market and below to provide that affordability in the rents. To date, Beyond Shelter has, in its pipeline throughout, participated in 19 housing development affordable projects, producing approximately 421 units. Our most recent project we just finished up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, in October of 2010, which was a multifamily project similar to the one we have proposed here today. It was 28 units, and it worked very, very well for the community of Aberdeen. A little history about myself. I've been in the affordable housing industry for about 17 years. I'm originally from New England, North Dakota, and as Beyond Shelter has been paying attention and watching the developments out here in the Southwest and the South oil impacted areas, kind of had a special interest always in the Dickinson community because of my growing up in New England. And so when Blake approached me to say, hey, Dan, what can we do in Dickinson, we just kind of jumped at it as far as, gosh, we'd really love to come into this community. And the way we're proposing our project today is basically similar to projects we've done in the past, and what we'd like to do is a multifamily. We looked at the needs here in Dickinson, and yes, you have needs for senior housing, you have needs for homeless housing, you have needs for multifamily, but the resources to produce that housing is very precious and limited. So we, in discussions with the Stark County Housing Authority, we determined that the multifamily sector is the most needed right now to date. And so the project we're proposing, and I'd like to talk to you about and visit with you this evening, is Patterson Place Townhomes, which is basically, instead of the standard 3-story apartment building, it's an apartment home, several homes. It would be approximately 38 units, a mixture of 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. And basically, we're looking for support. There were 6 items in my request to Mr. Kessel and in your commission letter that we're looking for that we need. And we're applying for funding for the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency for low-income housing tax credits. And that funding deadline or application is coming up, or fast approaching. It's Monday the 28th. So critical tonight for approval and discussion is I need a letter of support from the community of Dickinson. I'm supporting our application for low-income housing tax credits. I also need a letter of support for sponsorship of a CDBG application. We would like to use CDBG funds for this project. I believe the funding application round is open until March 4th, and so we would need that letter of sponsorship or approval tonight, because as you guys know, the next meeting that you have for City Commission is the following Monday, and so if we don't have that, we wouldn't be able to submit the application. The other items that I have listed on there are also critical and crucial and play into how we basically are able to operate and basically buy down our rents to the levels that I talked about, or Blake talked about in the letter. Basically, we're looking at 38 units, 28 of them will be 2-bedroom units, and the rent ranges on those 2-bedroom units, the lowest rent, and it's only 1 unit, but it's 1 unit is approximately $375 a month, and that ranges for the 2-bedroom units all the way up to $775. So there's a mixture in there, and it basically ties to that wage range that I talked about, that $8 an hour job to that $17. But more specifically, it'll allow Blake's vouchers to be placed. Approximately half of the units will allow and have rent set at a level that will allow the Section 8 voucher. which will allow the community of Dickinson and Stark County to basically hold those vouchers here in the community without the funding being pulled and lost forever. We would have additional 8 units that would be 3 bedrooms that would range in rents from $727 to $897, and then the 2 4-bedrooms that would range in rent from $825 to $997. Now, our rents are also include all utilities except for electricity, so that the utility burden for heat, water, gas would be paid by the owner to help decrease that rent responsibility for the tenants and the residents, future residents. Currently, we have underway a market study, and it's not finalized yet, but what it's showing right now in the community of Dickinson, the average 2-bedroom rent for the newer developed apartments is about $1,000 plus the tenant has to pay utilities. If you kind of put that down to dollars and cents wise, to afford that, if you're looking at paying approximately 30% of your income for housing needs, you're looking at a $20, $22 an hour job just to afford that $1,000 a month rent. And so basically, our whole goal is to basically partner with the housing authority. They'll act as the property manager, help us monitor the rental assistance program, and also project base or specifically place 10 of their vouchers or up to 10 of their vouchers in the project itself.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't realize that the presentation would go this long. We
Sure.
have 2 timetable items, one at 6:20 and one at 6:30. If you could take a break, we'll deal with those 2 items, and then we'll come back to you and give you all the time you need.
Thank you, President Johnson.
Would that be okay?
That'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to the timetable agenda. 6:20 is a special use permit regarding Charbonneau Buick. Mr. Soren, would you introduce this?
I will, Mr. Johnson, just to make you aware, we did have a 6:10 as well, if we can go back to that one
Oh,
after this.
I'm sorry. Let's do that. So we have a public hearing at 6:10. We'll let you introduce that, and
Okay.
thank you.
We did receive a request for rezoning. It's Lot 7, 8, Block 1, Valentine subdivision, and the east half of Lot 1, Osepka's first subdivision. In your packet, you'll see a map that shows the area. This is south of town, and currently on the north borders of these lots that are being requested to be rezoned is an MDU substation in place. On the west side of this is Highway 22 and a general commercial portion of that Lot 1 as well. The owners of these lots are requesting the rezoning because of the noise that's generated from the substation, the amount of time that it's functioning now, and currently, I believe the lots are being used as a commercial business as well. Planning and zoning has reviewed this, and with the surrounding area being as it is recommending approval of their request.
Okay, thank you. What ordinance number is this?
Mr. President, this would be ordinance 1407.
1407? Okay. My apologies to the individuals concerned here. I looked right past that and thought we had some extra time in there, but we'll declare the public hearing open regarding this issue. Anyone that wishes to comment may do so. Just step to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Is there anybody that wishes to comment, either pro or con? There's no one that wishes to comment, so we'll declare the public hearing closed. Are there any comments by city commissioners?
Yes, Mr. President. I took a drive out there this morning, and is there a house located on those lots? It's right up next to that south gate there.
There is a home where Val Sanitation is operating that is a part of this.
There's, okay. But isn't there another house just to the north of that one, too?
No, not to the north. Directly to the north is the MDU substation.
Okay, so this would include the Val's sanitation?
Sanitation, yes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
I think for clarification, I think the Bell Sanitation is actually these two individuals, isn't it? Lyle and Alvin Stockert?
I know they were involved, I don't know if they're operating it right now or not, but yes, I believe it was a family
I would
business.
assume that, I don't think they would disagree with what they're trying to do here, since they are the residents there, but personally, I think it looks like a good request for them to make, and I'd have no problem supporting it.
There is another house, Mr. Lamblum's right, there is another house between Val Sanitation and the Williston Basin site there. Now, it must be on that property, that one large lot there apparently, and I don't know.
There is a house on the east half of Wasepka's subdivision, that Lot 1. And then Val Sanitation, I believe, is behind that, and there's a garage on the lot behind that yet. So it should be Lot 7 and 8.
Yeah. There's a house to the north of Val's also. Just a small home. It's 2137 for a house number. I assume it must be MDUs or Williston Basins. Appears to be on that site.
Was there any objection to this at planning and zoning? Did anybody show up to object?
No, we didn't have any on this at all.
Well, this is first reading. Would there be a motion regarding first reading?
Mr. President, I move we approve first reading in ordinance number 1407.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have the motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none, will vote. Mr. Lamblum?
This is first reading, aye.
Okay, Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Now we can go to 620, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We did receive a special use permit application from Charbonneau's Car Center. This one was in front of the city commission several months back to operate or to build a parking lot on Lot 7, Block H of the Dakota Land and Colonization. At that time, one of the, there was several people in opposition to the parking lot. There was also a house that was located between what they were proposing as a parking lot and their current new service center. Recently, they have acquired that property, and their request now includes the parking lot from the alley all the way over to Fifth Avenue West along First Street. Their access to the parking lot would come through the alley. They're proposing fencing all the way around it, 4-foot buffer area, ensuring there's trees in the boulevard along First that match what's on Fifth, and some shrubs along that fence. I believe it adds 26 parking spots, if I remember right. And with the concerns in the area of the daycare, the school, and the operations of the car center themselves, parking is becoming a big concern in that area. Therefore, they're back asking for the special use permit again for the parking lot. Planning and zoning is recommending approval of this, the request. I would mention that we did receive 2 letters regarding this, one from Stevenson's in support of the parking lot, and we did receive a letter from Terry Seville in opposition to the parking lot as well. But with that, planning and zoning did recommend approval of the special use permit.
Just so I'm clear, the house that is immediately west of Charbonneau's, the Charbonneau's have now purchased that property?
They have purchased it, and I don't know the exact terms. I believe they've given them till May to get out, and they'll actually take over and turn that all into a parking lot at that point.
Thank you. Mr. Colleen, this is not a public hearing on this item then, is it?
That's correct. Public hearing is held at Planning and Zoning.
Okay. Did anybody show up for the public hearing?
We just received the letters. There was no one there to speak in opposition of it.
All right, you've heard Mr. Soren's introduction. Other questions or comments by commissioners?
Were there any conditions suggested by the Planning and Zoning Committee?
They didn't add any, but the request did mention the fencing around the property, green space, trees that would be planted. So that would be all part of their proposal that we would be expecting them to adhere to.
Okay, did they say what kind of fencing they were looking at?
I believe currently they put a white vinyl fence. They would be looking to do something similar to that, along with maybe some rock or brick pillars to help tie it into the brick homes that are kind of in the area. Representative from Charbonneau is here if there's more specific questions you'd like to ask them as well. But there's certainly, the intent is to dress it up and help it fit into the neighborhood.
The other thing that I'd have some concern about would be the type of lighting. We'd need some non-intrusive type lighting. Is there a way to accommodate that, to keep it, to make it blend with the residential area?
I think in visiting with the neighborhood, the intent is not to put any lighting, so they wouldn't have to worry about creating any issues with the neighbors from lighting at this point. They would mostly be operated for employee and customer parking, and so after hours lighting they didn't feel was important, I don't believe.
And then finally, do you have any concern about the line of sight between First Street and Fifth Avenue with a 4-foot fence at that location?
Yeah, we'll be working with them to make sure we get the proper fence heights at that location so we can keep the sight distance triangle open there.
To avoid the line of sight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything
President.
else?
When we discussed it a year or so ago, one of my considerations or concerns was the home in between Charbonneau's and the lot that they purchased at that time. I believe they've reached an agreement with that homeowner that is satisfactory to her, and which they obviously did. So, by removing that home, changes a lot of things as far as what we were concerned about. I've driven around those 2 blocks quite frequently, and one of my concerns is the safety around those few blocks now. There is not any parking there, and the streets are lined with the vehicles, and you got to inch your way out into the intersection, and I think that causes more of a safety concern to me than anything else. I would be in favor of approving this to be used for the parking if they meet all the conditions as to how they're going to build it and fence it and so on. I think it's become more of a safety issue for me than anything right now.
I would second it.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Mr. Colling, as I recall, when we do these special use permits, if we're going to put conditions on them, we do have to spell those out.
That's correct, Mr. President. You can attach whatever conditions you deem appropriate, but those do need to be spelled out in your motion.
Do we have to be so exact tonight in crafting the words, or can we delegate some of that to you and Mr. Soren? I think we're probably in agreement that this should be done now, but, the things like the green space and the fence, we would want that clear on the special use permit that those
Mr.
are
President.
expected. Yes?
The planning and zoning minutes do enumerate those things. I just went in and got a copy before the meeting here, but they do enumerate those things, and they answer the questions that Mr. Lamblum's been asking, I think the things that you're probably considering right now, and I think that if somehow, however those things can be worked into the motion or to the ultimate permit, I think it would satisfy everybody.
Mr. Colling, do you have a suggested motion there, or?
Well, I think we can wordsmith the specific restrictions that you want to apply on there. As long as we have some idea of what those restrictions are, we'll prepare the motion accordingly.
I'd be prepared to offer a motion to approve the permit to include the items that the property owner enumerated at planning and zoning.
Okay,
Would that be,
I think that's good enough for me. So there's our motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
And those items state what?
to talk about the fact that they have purchased the house that we've discussed previously. They're going to access the lot through the alley and not from Fifth or First. There's not going to be any lighting, white vinyl fence with brick columns, talking about a green space, I assume, outside the fence for planting some trees.
Could I'm just going to throw something out here before I'm going to try to amend it, but if, in the event that there is lighting provided in the future, that a certain non-intrusive type lighting system be used, we have to look down the road here in maybe 3 or 5 years, and, they're finding out that it's necessary for them to light it. Or do we have another mechanism available to us that would prevent it from being a high-intensity lighting system that would, interrupt the ambience of the neighborhood?
Let me take a stab at this. If in the special use permit, it would say no lighting.
Okay.
Okay? So in the event that lighting, it's, 5 years down the road, people change their mind, say, yeah, we should have some lighting there, then they'd have to come before the commission and get an amendment to the special use permit. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. President.
So at that
Yeah.
point, whoever's on the commission and whoever is at city staff would have an opportunity to deal with proper lighting at that
That takes care
time.
of my concern then.
Okay. So, did you move that motion?
I did.
And,
I
and we got a second. Good. Been a long day.
Mr. President, I have a couple other things I'd like to say, though.
Yeah.
This has really been a difficult issue, and personally, I think, as a community, we really have to be vigilant, respecting zoning and respecting what I call land use creep. That was my biggest issue with this several months ago when we looked at it. I think that in this case, that concern is now outweighed by the points that Mr. Steiner brought up. There's a pragmatic issue here now with the parking, with the safety, with the traffic, with everything else. And that's why I'm ready to make this motion. But I just need to say that I think we need to be vigilant about this with these special use permits. I think that Charbonneau's have really gone to great lengths to try to make this as good a situation as possible. And I think we need to commend them for that. I suspect that the fact that we haven't much for protest here means that adjacent property owners are seeing the pragmatic side of this as well. So we need to do this, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any other comments? Not, we'll vote on the motion then. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
All right.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So, Mr. Soren, we'll let you continue with the 6:30 item also.
We do have another special use permit application from Benedict Living Communities. This one is on Lot 1, Block 2, Springwood Second Edition. It is directly east of the Benedict home, where the city owns this lot. Currently, it's on the east side of 4th Avenue East. St. Benedict's does have a parking lot there. This lot is located actually behind their parking lot and ties into the current facility that they have. Certainly, their growing needs for parking at that area have driven them to this request. There was some question at Planning and Zoning because this lot was labeled park on the plat as to whether it was actually a dedicated park or not. We did research that, and the city does own this property as a city lot. It's not a dedicated park, so it is a lot that can be sold. Planning and Zoning looked at this in the area and is recommending approval of the parking lot, or a special use permit for a parking lot at this location. This one, there was a request for lighting to be done on this because of how it's tucked back in along the drainage ditch. They have a little bit more security concerns, 24-hour staff. So part of that was presented and was approved, or recommend approval to the City Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soren. You've heard his introduction. Any comments or questions?
It appears, Mr. Soren, that the motion at Planning and Zoning was for approval with non-invasive lighting. That they
Yes.
included that in the motion.
And was there any opposition to this?
We received none on this.
Nice.
Mr. President.
Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Soren, is the intention to pave this here at the same, in the near future, this parking lot?
I don't believe their intention is to pave the whole thing. I believe their intention is to pave a portion of it or grow the parking lot. I know they're in their budget process, and eventually I believe their intentions would be to pave it, but I don't know if they're planning to do I don't believe they're planning to do the whole thing right now.
One of the concerns we had when we okayed a parking lot, I believe it was adjacent to Great Plains Kitty Corner Clinic, from the clinic there, was the dust and so on, and I don't think that became an issue at all. So I'm kind of wondering if they've approached that topic on this one.
They didn't request to have a parking lot that was not paved. Our intention would be, when they develop it as a parking lot, it will be paved. The intention is not to let them gravel it and use it as a gravel parking lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Not, is there a motion regarding this item?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
move to approve the special use permit application.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm assuming when we do that, Mr. Colling, that that incorporates what Planning and Zoning agreed to in their motion.
That's correct.
That's okay. All right, we have the motion, the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So, Mr. Madler, I think we're back to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Just to kind of reiterate and just give you some additional information on the site location, we've identified approximately a 4-acre site in the Roars development, which is 80 acres on the western edge of Dickinson. The financing of this project is going to take the cooperation and commitment of several different entities. How you produce affordable housing is difficult. It takes a lot of cooperation. Our biggest tool that we're going to be utilizing is the low-income housing tax credit, which essentially, if we're successful in the application, the state of North Dakota will bring approximately 55 to 60% equity into the deal. So it's just like when you're purchasing your home, if you can bring a 50 to 60% down payment, your mortgage is less, i.e. you can charge less rents to basically cover the mortgage. In addition to the CDBG funds that could potentially come into the project, we would apply for home funds, which are federal dollars administered through affordable housing developers here in the western end of the state. They're Super Choto that administers the home funds. We would apply for some foundation dollars through the Otto Bremer Foundation. Beyond Shelter itself would be basically be the ultimate owner of the project, and we'd be committed to this project for 30 years. We would have to keep our rents affordable for the next 30 years. And so we're prepared to bring approximately $300,000 to $350,000 of our own cash equity into the deal. And there's a couple other funding sources that we would utilize that would bring, essentially $10,000 and $15,000 here and there. All together, kind of basically is the whole financing package. And so before you today, of the 6 items I listed, 2 of them were support letters for the application for the tax credits and the CDBG funding. The other 4 items were related to the actual ultimate financing package. The rents I quoted today, with the rent ranges, all assume certain things will take place. And the biggest assumption that I'm currently relying on and underwriting my pro forma is the pilot. And just wanted to get you some information on that, just so you can understand how that works. Payment of lieu of taxes is basically a tool that the city, county can use to basically bring affordable housing to their communities. It's been used, we've utilized a pilot payment in every project we've developed to date. What essentially, bottom line, is it allows us to basically buy down our rents from maybe a range of $80 to $120, maybe even higher, depending on the area that we're building in. And with the high cost of constructions here in Dickinson, it's really crucial that we would secure a pilot. So we are requesting a pilot, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. But basically, my underwriting assumption and my application fundings that'll go in next week and the following week would assume that the city of Dickinson and the community would be willing to consider and provide a pilot for the project. The other items listed are waiver of building permit fees, waiver of utility connection fees, and a waiver of landfill tipping fees. It's a little bit of everything, which all adds up together that basically helps basically produce the rents that I talked about. So those 6 items are basically the requests that we're requesting tonight. Of the 6, the most 2 crucial are the support letters that I need action on, I believe Mr. Kessel had indicated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Madler. We are familiar with how pilots work. We've dealt with pilot here in the past year. Mr. Kessel, I have a question. Was this discussed at the previous commission meeting?
President Johnson, no, it was not. This is a project that's come to the attention of the city of Dickinson within the last 2 weeks. So it's something that's been very quick to develop an opportunity.
I can't speak for everybody here right now, but speaking for myself, I would be ready to act tonight on the sponsorship application and the letter of support. All the other things you've mentioned, I think we need to take a look at that. I know with the pilot with the previous project we did, I think we disappointed our developer a little bit. We required a little higher pilot payment than what he probably wanted, and that may be the case here too. So I think if you're making an application, I would caution you on what you might indicate that this commission might do regarding the pilot. I think we need to see the numbers. So.
President Johnson, in anticipation of your comments, what I'd hope you would do is allow the staff some time to make a recommendation on items 2, 4, 5, and 6 at the next commission meeting, and bring that forth to the city commission for further consideration.
Well, certainly. But I think we could act on the, like I said, the letter of support and the sponsorship, the city agreeing to be the sponsor. Any objections or questions, comments?
And those are the two critical things that you need for next
To
week.
do the application, that's correct. Beyond Shelter is willing to submit the applications and move forward and work with Mr. Kessel and the city to basically work on the issues for, the 4 items. I need to underwrite my deal at a realistic assumption. Like I said, I don't want any unexpected surprises because that could throw my whole deal out the window. And I would hate to have an award of tax credits and then basically have to turn those credits back to the state and lose that development opportunity. So I believe we'll be working directly with Mr. Kessel and city staff to basically, hopefully, get some direction as far as what is an acceptable pilot level so that I can accurately reflect that in my applications going to the state and for the CDBG funding, so that basically when and if the action is taken and it's in a favorable action, that it's not a surprise. But definitely appreciate the opportunity, and Beyond Shelter is willing to take that risk and to move this project forward.
What kind of time frame are you looking at for development? From application to?
Sure, the application is due, as I said, on Monday, the 28th. The state of North Dakota usually turns those applications around within 30 to 45 working days. So an award of the low-income housing tax credits, we'll probably know the first part of April, by mid-April for sure. And then soon after that, once I have an award, I'll work on finding a syndicator to purchase the credits, secure my permanent financing, secure additional grant funds, work towards a closing with bank financing and syndication by August so that we can break ground in September. The construction period itself would be approximately 12 months, so hopefully by August of 2012, we would have the 6 buildings placed in service and ready for occupancy.
Where is the proposed site?
The proposed site is within the 80 acres of the Roars construction on the western end of Dickinson. It's approximately 4 acres, which abuts or adjoins the business I-94 business loop, and it's approximately right in the middle from the north to south end of that, which is really ideal for family housing when you look at all the amenities and the activities that you have going on in that part of town, with the access to the recreational facility, the access to Dickinson and Dickinson Trinity, Dickinson High, the college, the strip mall on States Avenue, and then the direct access through town. It's for family housing, that site is ideal. And understand from Roars Development that they're going to be working on providing a 10-foot walkway pathway to the recreational facilities, so it'll really be conducive to families basically participating and having that walkability in that neighborhood as well.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Kessel, or anybody, on the last pilot program that we put in place, does anyone remember what the percentage was at that time?
President Johnson, Commissioner Steiner, I did hand out for you today the resolution regarding the pilot that we provided at the for Metro Plains. What we did in that event is we decided on a figure of $16,000 in 2010, and then we escalated that figure 3% a year for the conclusion of 17 payments. I did speak to Mr. Madler about, he's presented you some information that would require the pilot to be based upon collectible rents. Mr. Madler and I did speak prior to the meeting tonight, did show him this schedule. He has no problems with a schedule that would be something similar to this or based upon a flat figure rather than on collectible rents. So that's the type of information what we'd like to do is, as a staff, get together and present something to you that would look something like what we've done in the past.
Go ahead.
One of my concerns is that we've had other parties that have come in with income-based housing plans, and I think we need to make sure that we treat them all fairly in what we have done in the past, and otherwise we may be bouncing all over the board here on this here, and it might not be in our best interest, or may run up against the wall sometime in the future. So I have no problem with working on 4, 5, 6, and number 2. I'd be in favor of approving 1 and 2 tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I guess my question between this development and the one by the other developer was a for-profit entity, were they not, compared to a nonprofit entity doing this development? And in my mind, that's a lot different when you are offering pilot money to a for-profit development versus offering pilot money to a nonprofit North Dakota-based developer that's going to be building the housing right here in our community. And that adds a whole different flavor as to, I guess, my wanting to help facilitate that versus for a for-profit agency. Big difference.
And one of the things, just to add that to that conversation, is our ability as a nonprofit. You know, our relationship has always been with partnering with the housing authorities and try to basically preserve and/or facilitate as many voucher holders and affordable rents in the deeper rent markets, or affordable rents. And so typically what we see is our rents are always below the for-profit, low affordable housing developer because of that. But we need commitments and different tools to buy down those rents, and obviously the pilot is a huge tool that we've used in the past to basically allow the voucher holders to actually be able to afford and actually place their voucher in the units.
Anything else?
President,
Mr. Cohen?
one matter that I should make you aware of as concerns item 3 on the list, the CDBG grant. There's nothing that prohibits the city from being the applicant for a CBDG grant. However, we have received some indication from the North Dakota Department of Commerce and the Attorney General's office that the city may be ineligible for those CBDG grants pursuant to federal conflict of interest rules. And I just mentioned that to make you aware of the potential or ineligibility on that.
That doesn't prevent us from applying as a sponsor, though. All you're doing is telling us that there's risks that we may be denied.
That's correct.
Excuse me, can't sponsor you?
You're not prohibited from being the sponsor. You may be declared, the city may be declared ineligible as a sponsor of that grant.
And you're aware of the risks there.
Correct.
And how does that affect your overall project?
Well, the CDBG funding is kind of a nice source of funding if we can access it, just because the governor has some discretionary CDBG funding, so we have a potential to leverage any potential award locally with a match amount of equivalent. Our current underwriting is our request for the CDBG funding would be approximately $100,000. And if we were successful, depending on all the other applicants for those precious resources, we would then turn around and immediately apply to the Division of Community Services for the governor's discretionary source of CDBG funds with the potential of matching an additional $100,000. And so that's a potential of $200,000 coming into the community in Dickinson. And it would really, as far as the loss of that, we'd have to replace that with other additional resources, which is additional foundation dollars and other things, which just makes it more challenging. But the obstacles are there, challenges are there in every one of these deals, and they get built for that. To date, we've been successful in overcoming the obstacles, but it would make it easier, but I don't think it would stop the project moving forward. It's just a nice leveraging tool to be able to tie into that governor's non-discretionary CDBG funds.
Overall cost of the project's anticipated at?
Approximately $6.5 million.
Mr. Cohen, can we do this with one motion, or do we have to have a motion for the letter of support and a motion for the sponsorship?
I think you can do it with one motion.
Okay. You want to take a shot at giving us that motion? And I know they're all talented too, but,
Suggested motion would be a motion to approve a letter of support from the city, from the Dickinson City Commission for the low-income housing tax credit, and to have the city be the sponsor for CBDG funding for the project.
I would make that motion.
you're very eloquent. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, do you think that motion is adequate for your needs?
It'll allow us to make the applications.
Okay. So we have the motion, the second, further discussion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lambo.
because of a perceived conflict of interest, I'm going to have to abstain from any action on this particular subject.
How would you have a conflict of interest here? I mean, in terms of a material,
Our office handles the dissemination of information on the CDBG program as well as the, what do I want to say, the format for deciding these particular projects and their funding.
but there is no financial gain to you one way or the other, is there?
Not at this time.
Mr. Foley, maybe you should help me out before I go any further.
Sure, there are two different sets of conflict of interest rules that apply in a CBDG application. There's the state law, which provides that any commissioner or any board member who has a direct and substantial personal or pecuniary interest in a matter must abstain from the vote on that matter and allow the matter to proceed without his participation. That's, I believe, what Mr. Lamblum's abstention from this vote would accomplish. The other set of conflict of interest rules that we deal with is those from the federal government, since CBDG is a HUD program administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level. They have a more stringent set of conflict of interest rules that do not allow those conflicts to be rectified merely by abstention from a vote.
Okay. So long and short of it is, he should abstain then from this vote.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Well, I know, but I want to make sure. Okay, anything else then? Okay, we'll go with the vote then. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and Mr. Lamblum abstains. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners.
Item E then is the front entrance to the museum. Mr. Kessel, what's this all about?
This is also a CDBG application for an ADA accessible grant that would make the museum. There would be improvements to the front of the museum that would allow ADA accessibility to that building. Ms. Chris Steffen is here from the board to discuss that application specifically.
Good evening. I'm Chris Steffen, the president of the Southwestern North Dakota Regional Foundation. And we have filled out an application for CDBG funds to upgrade the entrance of our museum to be ADA compatible. Also included with this application is some cost to go and fix the concrete pad that is out front. If you look through the application or the packet that we gave you, we have pictures at the back. The concrete pad is cracked and kind of offers a hazard to people entering and leaving the building. And there are also apparently some issues that might occur with water coming back to the building. So that would also rectify that problem. And at the same time, we are also including some electrical items in there. One for the cost of the electrical to operate the ADA door, and then also some electrical to provide lighting. Since the museum is now open all year long, we do experience in the early evenings of North Dakota, it does get dark and the lighting that is there is really not functional, and does provide another hazard to people entering and leaving the museum. So ultimately, we've come to the city commission and asked for your support, and then also 50% of the funding. The reason we've come to the city is it is a city-owned building. We do have an operating agreement with the city that would go and they have agreed to take care of any of the building costs and upgrades. The foundation, our role is to go and help with exhibits and programming and provide funding in that capacity. And when that's kind of where we come in. We also do want to go and start up taking up some fundraising to do some other things. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Any questions?
So if I understand right, this is similar to what we just discussed with the previous group, where the city would be the sponsor?
Correct.
For, okay.
And then we are also asking for the city to go and sponsor, offer 50% for local funds, and you'll see that amount, it was $8,942.50.
So, yeah. So if we agree to this, the motion then is similar in that we would agree to sponsor the application and cover 50% of the costs. We could say up to a certain figure, $9,000 or $10,000. And since this is a museum, we typically have been supporting the museum from the hospitality tax funds, so that would probably be the most logical funding source for this.
Yes.
So with that, questions or comments by commissioners?
So if we approve this, and then do we have the same conflict of interest here? And so you will make application, you could get denied the other $89,42.50, and then what is Plan B as far as still funding the project if you get denied because of the conflict of interest?
Plan B would probably just to be revised and ask for 100% funding from the city, just because of that contract. And it is one of the goals that I think the city administrator and the museum director had for this upcoming year, so.
And this wasn't budgeted in your annual budget, or?
No, it kind of came about, we learned about the ability to go and apply for this funding and this grant, and we figured it was a very good opportunity to make the facility accessible to everyone, and so, and also lessen the burden of the cost on the city, so we thought it was a great opportunity at the time. So it kind of came up spur of the moment, but I think
Okay.
it's a great idea.
I would assume if we pass the motion here, under Plan A, if Plan A doesn't work, we're not committed to Plan B unless we vote again and agree to Plan B. Because if your application is denied, then we have a different
Yep.
situation.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Other comments? Well, Mr. Oltman, do you want to take a crack at this one by yourself, or should we, or should we have Mr. Colleen help us out?
He's much more
I'll let
eloquent
him
than I
knock
am.
out the first part of it.
Okay, Mr. Colleen, you want to give us a suggested motion if we want to do what Ms. Stefan is requesting?
The motion would be for the city to support and sponsor the CBDG grant application as provided in the materials in front of you.
And then the funding, you want to cover that too?
If you want to cover that in one motion, you could add to that the funding of the local share be provided from the city hospitality tax.
I think you said 50% share, didn't you?
50%.
Yeah. There would be our motion. Is there a
That
second?
would be the motion.
Yes. Mr. Altman's moves that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lamblum.
again, because of a perceived conflict of interest, I'm going to have to abstain from any action on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. President, I'd just like to recognize Terry Thiel, the CVB Director. She helped put this application together, and since we're using hospitality tax funds, I think that's important to recognize that they're supportive of the project as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Ullman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Lamblum abstains, so the motion carries.
Thank you.
Good luck. Tab 5, Public Safety, Chief Seebuck of the Fire Department.
President Johnson, Commissioners, the Fire Department responded to 28 calls for service in January. Included in these were 5 carbon monoxide incidents, 4 incidents requiring ventilation of a premises due to smoke, 1 vehicle fire, 8 incidents where we were dispatched and we were canceled en route, investigations of 2 citizens' complaints of code violations, 1 natural gas leak, and 7 responses where the alarm was unintentional or due to a system malfunction, although we completed the response. During this same time frame, our Fire Prevention Bureau conducted 132 total inspections, while also being actively involved in the responses and our ongoing department training program. And you also have with information as part of this packet our 2011 department roster, as broken down by companies. Reflects 38 members, 34 volunteer, and in addition to that, 5 reserve members. And we've just added 2 volunteers that will be coming in and getting their equipment sometime this coming week. Also included with this report is a copy of the premium billing statement from North Dakota Workforce Safety and Insurance for 2011. The Fire Department is the coordinating agency for the city's safety program. The city received a safety discount for our efforts in 2010 off of our 2011 premium in the amount of $12,619. This is, the credit goes to the employees and to the department heads. They're trying to maintain a safe work environment. And again, in 2011, we are involved in incentive programs with Workforce Safety and Insurance, not only to achieve a premium discount, but also to enhance our safety program and provide and ensure we provide an injury-free workplace for our employees. And as a report at this time, you have preliminary information concerning revisions to Chapter 13 of Dickinson Municipal Code addressing fire prevention and protection. Many of the revisions you see are to update Chapter 13 to recognize areas that are now covered by the adoption of the International Fire Code. Additional revisions deal specifically with the adoption of the 2009 International Fire Code. A part of this, in response to questions from the business community concerning the possibility of retail sales of fireworks within city limits, the proposed code adoption presented to you contains amendments and limitations that would allow this if the commission chooses. The use of fireworks within city limits would remain prohibited, however. Attorney Coling is reviewing the information, and it is our intent to have this before you as a first reading at the next commission meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief Seebuck. Are there any comments or questions for the chief?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
Chief Seebuck, in your monthly reports, every once in a while, it shows a citizen complaint. What would be a complaint that the citizens would have?
A common one this time of year would be from an establishment where exit doors are blocked by snow or ice. A management company or a local manager may not be quite timely, let's say, in getting that snow and ice cleared, and in fact, we have a blocked exit. That's somewhat typical this time of year.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay,
Thank you.
Chief. Fire Department. Captain Dossinger. Did I say Fire Department?
You did.
I meant the Police Department, I'm sorry.
Let us slide this time.
I won't do it again.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. I have the January 2011 Police Department report for you. We'll start with the traffic services. As you can see, we had a very busy month for accident investigations. We investigated 159 accidents in January. That's in comparison to 90 in 2010. 28 of those 159 accidents were hit-and-run accidents. 6 of those accidents were injury-related. And Patrol Division also conducted 241 traffic stops. 33 of those related to red light violations.
I've a question. The accidents, have we, in that month, did we have any accidents at intersections where people had either run a stoplight or a stop sign?
We did. We did. A large increase, that 159 accident definitely reflects the type of winter weather conditions we had as far as our road conditions and the increased amount of traffic volume that we are seeing on our streets.
Okay, but some of these accidents are at intersections, and
That is correct. That is why we are stepping up our enforcement efforts, targeting red light violations. It seems like it's more prevalent for people to try to squeeze through that light and getting through there rather than stopping.
No.
That is causing a problem.
See, I think one of the issues we have, too, is that our traffic fine amounts are not a deterrent. We're limited to kind of the state rate, for lack of a better term. And so for, say, running a stoplight or speeding, I think our fine is $20, where a few years ago it used to be $40.
That's correct.
There was a bill in the legislature to allow cities like Dickinson to set their own traffic fines. I think that bill has been amended to where it would now be twice the state rate, which is better than what we have, but I don't really think goes far enough. I really see this as a safety issue. I think my own personal observation is we're seeing way too many cars trying to beat red lights, and we have a lot of large vehicles now in this community. I'm just afraid we're going to have a very serious accident, and I'm hopeful that the legislature will act and allow us greater leeway in setting these fines.
We certainly hope so, and especially the $20 doesn't seem like it's that much of a deterrent factor right now for our drivers. Not saying that $40 could be much more, but it's definitely a step in the right place.
No.
School zones, we've seen there's a total of 42 school zone contacts made in the month of January. And what we kind of consider a school zone in our area is probably within about a 3 to a 4 block area around our schools. We target those every morning and at release time in the afternoons. There were 14 of the school zone contacts were citations, 21 of the school zone contacts were parking tickets, and 7 of those were written warnings. Our calls for service in January of 2011, we had 1,617 calls for service. In comparison, you can see in 2009, we had 1,354 calls, and last year in 2010, in January, we had 1,452 calls. So there was quite an increase there. Usually the month of January is kind of a little lull for us. Calls are usually down a little bit, but as you can see, that this January was definitely busy. We also did receive the 2010 report from the Southwest Narcotics Task Force. I'm going to touch on a couple items from them on that report for you. As you can see in the 2010 cases, they worked a total of 100 cases that were forwarded for prosecution. The majority of those were marijuana and prescription drugs. Those were the 2 most prevalent. Each of those had 27 cases that were worked. There were 17 cases of methamphetamines that was forwarded for prosecution. We did see 5 cases of ecstasy and 1 cocaine case in 2010. The seized narcotic and assets. This chart depicts the street value of the items seized and the arrests made. As you can see, there was $21,000 in forfeited assets seized. That consisted of 2 vehicles and currency. There was a $15,000 worth of cocaine seized, $3,440 of ecstasy seized, and $5,275 of prescription drugs seized. As you can see in this area, particularly in Stark County, in the Dickinson area, that marijuana is the big one. Almost $400,000 worth of marijuana was seized last year in 2010. The big portion of why that's up so high, for some reason, the price of marijuana, the street value is really high right now in this area. And 2 reasons that it has is because of the legitimacy of medical marijuana now in Montana. And most of the marijuana that we're seeing now in this area considered hydroponically grown, which is has a greater value to it. And as far as the methamphetamine cases, that's still prevalent, almost $16,000 of street value seized on that. January training for our department, our two K-9 handlers, Sergeant Mike Cannell and Senior Officer Corey Lee, attended training both in Bismarck and in Fargo, and certifying their dogs Talon and Buster. 5 officers attended Incident Command School held here in Dickinson. And Detective Kylan Klauser and Detective Travis Lyons conducted TASER recertification training for our department. Detective Ron Van Dorn and Detective Travis Lyons also attended crime scene training held in West Fargo. And this training was designed to enhance their abilities in crime scene preservation and evidence collection. Southwest Tactical for January, there were no call-outs, thankfully, in January. They remained active with their training. On January 5th, they conducted a firearms training concerning subject and hostage resolution. And on January 19th, they also conducted firearms training on entry scenarios in qualifying with their protective masks. On January 20th, team leaders from our team attended the State Special Operations Committee meeting in Bismarck. We have submitted our state certification paperwork for 2011, both for our tactical team and our crisis negotiation teams. So we are state certified for 2011. Are there any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
of the 241 traffic stops were 33 related to the red light. I'm glad to see that this has been stepped up. And my concern is that of the 241 traffic stops, 15% are the red light violations. And I go through that intersection 2-3 times a day. And I can honestly say, almost every time, there's a violator going through, either coming at me or going up beside me. So I would encourage you to continue to take a look at those 2 intersections, Highway 22 and Senex and 12.
Yep.
I'm guessing that's where a majority of these violations occurred.
Majority of them are occurring along Highway 22.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks for adding the years prior to as a comparison. That's a really good comparison for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We're to tab 6. Public Works. Dickinson Solid Waste Facility. Mr. Soren, are you making any introductory remarks here?
Thank you, President Johnson, Commission. We do have the 2010 year-end report. I did request that Aaron who's a chief operator acting as a solid waste manager currently, come and present that report to the Commission.
Well, Mr. Prowse, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson, Commissioners. I'm Aaron Prowse, as Sean said, Chief Operator, Acting Interim Manager for the Dickinson Solid Waste Facility. Tonight, I want to present you with the 2010 year-end report. We handle all the collections, disposal, and landfilling of municipal solid waste for the City of Dickinson, as well as 23 surrounding communities and other private haulers. We run 2 permitted sites, the Baylor Building and also the landfill. Tonight I'm going to run through the 2010 year-end report. I'll touch on a few key points for you guys to look at, and then I'll have a spot for questions. On the operation summary, in 2010 we produced an estimate 21,000 bales. When I talk bales, we're talking the size of 4 feet wide, 2.5 feet tall, 5 feet long. Approximately 2,300 pounds per bale is what the weight is. Materials that we collect at our transfer facility include household waste, construction materials, shingles, sheetrock, inert waste, recycling items such as tires, cardboard, yard waste that are turned into compost, wood chips that are, or trees and chipped wood that are turned into wood chips, waste oil, white goods, asphalt, and concrete. I noticed a few mistakes on this report when I was going through it. I apologize. The first is on the little quotations on each page, there's a little line missing. On the electronic printout, they were filled in. When it got sent to the printer, somehow it got lost. If somebody wants an electronic copy, I can get that to you. The second one is on the waste oil collected under the operation summary page. It should be 9,250 gallons, not 92,050 gallons. For the solid waste bale count, you'll have the monthly bale count. Notice in January and February, the bale count is going to be slightly lower due to about a 2.5 week repair that we did to our baler. So the solid waste got landfilled at that time. It was not baled. We did an extensive repair that should improve the operation, or the machine, for approximately 6 to 8 years. In comparing from 2009 to 2010, you're looking at approximately 1,500 more bales. For the 2010 revenue page, you'll note that the revenues for 2009 are going to be higher than 2010, and the majority of that comes to, or is related to the tornado, as well as selling of our fish compost and the approval to sell more asphalt and crushed concrete. The transaction summary page is just going to outline all the loads and tonnages that were received at our facility. The incoming tonnage 5-year comparison page. This would include all the tonnages coming to our facility. It does not include unit count items such as tires or appliances and white goods. From 2008 to 2009, you'll see that there's about a 4,000 ton average increase, which equates to about 400 bales.
Mr. Proust?
Excuse me.
Question. Would this give us the best indicator from your perspective of how the region is growing your service area, or?
Yes, it will.
This would? Okay.
Yes, it will.
Thank
And
you.
I will get to that in the next couple pages here. As I said, from 2008 to 2009, we've seen about a 4,000 ton increase in solid waste. And from 2008 to 2010, we've seen approximately 7,000 ton, which would be 3,000 more than '09. The incoming tonnages also include what we collect on our city routes, the imported tonnages from the outlying cities and private haulers, and also oil-related waste. The city route tonnages took a large peak from 2008 to 2009 with an increase of 1,500 ton, and continued to go up another 300 ton to 2010. That is all the waste that our privately owned or city-owned trucks collect within the city of Dickinson, both on commercial and residential. Imported tonnages, as I said, we receive solid waste from 23 surrounding communities. Some is hauled by the cities, and others is hauled by private owned companies. Due to growth, as we are continuing to grow, they are also continuing to grow. From 2008 to 2009, we received an additional 550 ton. And then from 2000 to 2010, an extra 300 on top of that, approximately. Oil-related refuse. This is a new item that we placed on into the year-end report this year. It used to be categorized as just household waste, or if it was pellets or other things to that order, it would go under construction waste. We broke that all out. We made it into an oil-related waste, and you can see from 2009 to 2010, it went up another 900 ton to 2,949 ton. Cardboard bales. Cardboard is one of our major recycling items. You will note that in 2009, there's going to be no numbers. That is due to G&G Recycling retiring and discontinuing service. We also had a changeover in staffing, and it was not tracked for 2009, so I don't have any numbers there for you. Years prior to that, the city offered cardboard recycling to G&G Recycling to assist with their costs in the cardboard collections. Our department's currently collecting cardboard from the Perry Hills Mall, Baker Boy, and the 2 Dan's grocery stores. We also, in 2010, increased our collection efforts at our Baylor Building facility for both residents and commercial businesses, and that is a free option, free of charge. We do not offer a collection option as G&G Recycling did, so that's why that number's going to be a lot lower. The cardboard recycling shipment page, that'll just tell you the loads that we shipped, how many tons were shipped, and the total amount received from cardboard shipments throughout 2010. Composting material, we do not restrict yard waste from entering our landfill, but we do encourage residents to bring yard waste out to our facility. We are looking at possibly creating drop sites within Dickinson to increase those numbers. Compost consists of yard waste such as grass, leaves, vegetation, and other plant material. When it's disposed of in the landfill, it produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas, and it also takes up landfill space. In 2010, we collected an estimate of 235 ton, produced 400 tons of compost, and sold 307 to citizens. The wood chips is a collection site out at the landfill for tree branches, pellets, and other clean lumber. We hire a contractor to come in, chip the wood, and then we use it for our own personal use at our landfill as a base cover, and some of it is sold to the public as well.
Mr. Kraus?
Yep.
Do you have any estimate as to what percentage of the tonnage that goes into the landfill every year is yard waste? Do you know approximately what that number is?
We would have to
In other words,
do-
there's a lot more yard waste going in besides what you're composting.
Yes. We would have to do some further research on that. What I can say is our rear load truck that goes around town, probably 95% of his loads through the summer months would be consisting of yard waste material.
And that all goes to the landfill.
And it all goes to the landfill. Yep. Tire recycling, in May of 2010, to increase the longevity of the landfill and to alleviate other complications that we previously had, tires floating to the top, trapping gases, things to that order, we eliminated them from our landfill and we started shipping them to a recycling center in Bismarck. At that recycling center, they took the tires, they shredded them, and they used them as a base cover for their landfill, and also used them in roadway projects at the landfill. Since then, we started shipping them to Savage, Minnesota, where we send them to a recycler now that takes the tires, they make them into crumbles, and they use them to make track and fields, bumpers, rubber bumpers, curb stops, and other materials to that order. So the tires are actually getting reused into, and made into products versus just being buried back into a landfill. We diverted 160 ton of tires from our landfill since May to recycling centers. At our baling facility, we have drop sites for crushed concrete, or for concrete and asphalt, which is later, or it's stockpiled and then later crushed and made into reusable product. The city uses a majority of the product for city maintenance projects, and any excess would be then sold to the public. The city hauled weekly tonnage report just basically describes how many tons of waste come in on our trucks, our city-owned trucks, throughout the whole year. To answer your question, Gene, that's probably where you could get a breakdown. It would be on the rear load truck as to how much tons come in through the summer months. The next 4 pages are just route changes on the commercial side that we experienced through 2010. They would include increases in services, new services, some decreases, and things to that order. The final page is the list of 16 employees that makes this all possible. Without them, we wouldn't have the successful year we did in 2010. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Are there questions for him?
Mr. President, just a comment, excellent report. And as Mayor Johnson stated a few years ago, with reports like this, you make garbage interesting. And,
Thank you.
I think a lot of people would be surprised.
I think you said that years ago.
Did I say that years ago?
That wasn't me.
No? I think people in the community would be very surprised at how much you guys are doing out there and handling if they all had this report. Good job again.
Thank you.
I assume your business is growing.
Definitely. As we are growing, so are surrounding communities, which puts a bigger impact on us.
So we have
Some of your numbers, as I said, will relate to the growth that we are experiencing as well as surrounding communities.
No. Now, we've got a study going, right? Can either Mr. Kessler, Mr. Soren, or Mr. Kraus just comment briefly on the study?
I'll make a couple comments, and then maybe Engineer Soren can fill in the blanks. We have hired a contractor to let us know what the best way to operate our landfill is. We also have a permit application that is due in September. These are, if granted, these are 10-year permits, and so they are quite important to do them accurate and do them well. And so we are hoping for that contractor to assist us with that permit application, as well as answering some of our questions on ongoing operations of the landfill itself. So with that, I'll turn it over to Engineer Soren to fill in any further blanks.
Just to point out, we do have an RFQ out and have received proposals to hire an engineering firm, and the 2 commissioners that so graciously agreed to be a part of that, Mr. Altman and Mr. Landblum, we'll be seeing those coming in the mail either tomorrow or the next day, and we'll be getting together to make a recommendation to the city commission as to the firm that we want to take that project on for us and complete our permit for the landfill as well. A couple of comments talk about the growth, and one of the total income tonnages that I'd like to point out is, in 2008, 33,500 tons compared to last year at 40,582. That's approximately 5,500 bales more that they had to produce out there. And I think typically we're in, about 100 bales a day or something?
We're averaging approximately 100 to 110 bales per day.
So you can see the amount of effort that's had to happen. That puts a perspective on, 50 additional days almost of work on the baler over what we had to do from even 2008. So there's certainly some things we're looking at operational wise and watching those trends, but To me, that's a pretty telling sign in itself.
Aaron, what keeps you awake or at night or has you concerned as you look to the day-to-day operations and the future of our landfill and the Baylor building?
Well, first of all, I try to forget most of it when I go home at night. That's not always the case, though. The biggest thing is we're experiencing an extreme amount of growth right now. And due to a lot of turnover over the past 2 years, it's put a lot of weight back onto my employees. The hardest thing that we're facing right now is the growth portion of it. It's trying to overcome it and possibly get adequate staffing to keep going with our needs.
Any other comments or questions?
If I could elaborate just a little bit further on that issue alone, probably of all of our departments, our public works side, especially in solid waste, has experienced the most amount of retirements and/or turnover at the management level. I believe in the course of about 4 people that we've lost about 100 to 120 years of experience. That's not easily replaced, and Mr. Prouse is doing a nice job of keeping the ship upright while we seek to hire a permanent solid waste manager. And I think Tiff probably deserves some credit as well for producing this document. I think she helped you out.
Tiffany Wallace definitely deserves the credit on creating this report and putting it all together into a presentable form.
Well, great job. And it's not so tough to stand up in front of the commission, is it?
Depends.
Depends.
You did just fine.
Are we allowed to burn at all in the landfill?
Depending on what kind of material, I know I have helped out the sheriff's department and the police department in regards to burning evidence. Other than that, we have to go through getting burn permits for waste material, like wood material.
Right.
And being we are a large landfill, they will no longer issue us burn permits.
Not even a strike of lightning from a clear sky?
If that happens, then there's no control,
Okay.
along with large item fires that are beyond control. So we do all we can to keep them put out or get them out in a timely manner.
I asked this at the last meeting, but have you individually looked at biomass? Any type of use of biomass within your operation out there?
Currently, we have not.
Is that a possibility for integration into that?
It'll probably be a decision of our engineering firm that we're having look at our master plan.
Okay, other questions or comments? All right, thank you, good report.
I have the next agenda item too.
Oh, you do? Okay, well, let's go to item B then. You can take as many of these as you want.
No, not really.
Okay,
I got talked into these two, so.
all right. So item B has something to do with recycling drop-off site funding, so I'll let you take it from there.
Tonight, what we're asking for is the approval of funding for recycling drop-off sites. What we're looking at doing is increasing our recycling efforts, trying to alleviate some of the yard waste that is going into the landfill, along with increasing our cardboard activity and providing drop sites for both of these throughout the town. There's been 4 sites that were established throughout the city. The first being the 2000 block of 6th Avenue West, which would be west of Runnings Farm and Fleet. The second one is the 400 block of 10th Avenue East by the million-gallon water tank. The third is the 600 block of West Broadway, which is right to the north of the Public Workshop. And the fourth one is in question. I had a discussion today with a person at DSU, or at the college, and we were initially looking at the 600 block of States Avenue, and when he took it to his upper management, they were not in favor of it. So we'll have to look at a 4th site over in that area to service those residents. The site work will cost an estimate of $1,069 per site, which comes to a total of, for the 4 sites, of $4,276. That will include the cost of the base material, which will be crushed concrete and asphalt. It will include a dump truck, a blade, and an operator for doing the site leveling and preparing the sites. This work will actually be done by city personnel, mostly the street department. Containers for these sites, we are looking at one container, or one yard waste container and one cardboard container per site. Also, during the winter months, we will distribute ash containers there for ash collections, and there will be waste oil containers there for collection of waste oil. We are inviting, we're inviting the public, or help me out on this one.
We've invited other firms and organizations who are currently collecting materials to place bins or collection sites at these 4 locations so that it can be kind of a one-stop shop for people who are collecting recyclables in their home, and they can then drop them all off at one of these 4 sites.
Thanks, Sean. The sites that we're looking at are estimated at 10,000 square feet, which is 100 by 100 square. They're all, as I said, except for one of them, would be located on city-owned property. The containers are going to cost, for the open-top poly containers for the yard waste collections, will cost approximately $9,200 a piece, which comes to a total of $55,200. And the recycling, or cardboard containers, we're looking at purchasing 8 of those at $5,600 a piece, which comes to $44,800. The 6 yard waste containers, there will be 1 per site, plus 2 of them for rotation processes. And the cardboard containers are going to be 30-yard containers. There will be 1 at each site, plus 2 of them at our facility that we currently have. Right now, we're using open-top boxes out at our facility, and with the winds, it's blowing the material all over the yard. So we're looking at, that's why we're requesting 8 containers. 2 of them would be for rotation, and then 2 of them for at our site, and the other 4 at these sites. Signage, you're looking at, for site signage at the site locations, approximately $400 each, which is a total of $1,600. Signage for on like the back of the trucks or the side of the trucks, you're looking at $175 each, which would be a total of $1,225. And for the department pickups and vehicles, we're looking at 5 of them at $30 each, which comes to $150. We have an option right now of providing fencing around these sites. To do the fencing at each location, you're going to be looking at $8,000 a site, which comes to $32,000. There's talk of putting privacy slats into them to make them more attractive. The privacy slats will cost $2,400 per site, which is a total of $9,600. And then gates are $3,000 per site. The total cost to create these sites without the fencing comes to $107,000, $107,251. And to create these sites with fencing comes to $160,851. There's money set aside in a recycling fund with the City of Dickinson that was established many years ago. We're requesting to ask for $107,251 to develop these sites for use this summer. Along with those costs, there's going to be some operation costs that will be covered by our department, and they will be the lighting for every site, which will be furnished by the City of by MDU. 3 of the sites will cost $10 per month per site. and one will cost $12 per month per site. The reason that one is a little more is because it'll be underground wiring. There'll also be staffing involved, which we will be able to use our current staffing, and it's estimated at about one operator for approximately 2 days, 2 8-hour days to monitor and maintain the sites. And this will include also hauling the materials to the building or to the landfill. Questions?
Aaron, on the revenue generating side, have you penciled that out? You know, I look back at your cardboard recycling program and you brought in over $60,000 for your cardboard recycling efforts last year, and that's just what was brought to the Baylor building or collected. Have you looked at collections and how it's going to offset costs long-term?
Due to the fact that we don't know how much is going to be received at these sites, we haven't. The $60,000 comes from what was dropped off at our facility,
Mhm.
as well as from
What was
Baker
collected?
Boy,
Yep.
Dan's grocery stores, and the Prairie Hills Mall.
Mhm.
By increasing this, we're obviously going to increase revenue.
And save
To
on
what extent,
landfill,
I
too.
can't tell you.
And save on landfill usage, too.
And we'll also save on landfill space, yes.
Which could be a fairly large savings. I mean, to develop additional landfill space, I assume in the future is going to be quite expensive.
Yes.
So,
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Prowse, can you go over the 4 sites again?
The 4 sites will be the 2000 block of 6th Avenue West. It'll be right west of Runnings Farm and Fleet. They have that little storage yard west of their building. It's right to the north side of that.
Okay.
The 400 block of 10th Avenue East, it's by the million-gallon water tank. It will be right to the west of the million-gallon water tank. The third site is the 600 block of West Broadway, directly north of the Public Workshop. Currently, there's a used oil barrel over there. And then the fourth site, as I said, is in question. The college does not want it on their property anymore, so we'll have to look at locating something over in that area.
Sean, how much do we have in our recycling fund?
The balance right now is about $350,000, so either expense with or without the fencing would diminish that by less than half.
And why wouldn't we do the fences this year as we're developing? Why wouldn't we do it all at once?
We certainly can. It's just a matter of expense. The thought was if fencing isn't required, if we could get the funding to be approved and then use it based on a complaint process. The idea behind the fencing is twofold. Number one, it would act as an enhancement in terms of sight. These sites may not be the most attractive things in the world. And the other is to catch any material that may get blown out of bins or be provided. So we'd like to contain the materials on site as well. So those are the two main reasons for the fencing.
Right, and so I guess my question would be, rather than being reactive to complaints, why not do it right the first time and have the fencing and everything in place, and we've got the money and the resources, and make it a pleasant experience from day one, rather than being reactive to the citizens complaining about trash blowing into their area.
Commissioner Oltmann, that is exactly what we'd love to do. It's based on your reasoned opinions on whether or not to provide the funding to do so.
Mr. President,
Mr. Jackson.
I think you make good points. Many of these suggestions that Mr. Prowse has been going over the last few minutes came from the recycling committee that has been meeting pretty much monthly for quite some time now. We had first thought that this total project was going to be significantly more money than what Mr. Prowse has mentioned. It was actually my suggestion that maybe we delay the fence construction for a couple reasons. Number one, to make sure we've got the right sites. We may operate this for a year and decide that we should move a site or two. So there's that potential. I've also been observing what's going on in Bismarck, and the Bismarck sites that I've been to, none of them are fenced. Now, I'm surprised at that. But But your points are very valid, and the way the numbers are being presented tonight makes it more feasible to me, too. I want to talk about one or two other things here. The yard waste is really a significant thing, and as the mayor has suggested, it's such a big part of the waste that goes into our landfill. Those the cost savings are really tough to, put a number on, but it's really significant as you fill up a landfill. We did, during these committee meetings, come to a conclusion that the city, at least now, shouldn't get in front of any nonprofit group that might be doing some recycling. In the case of aluminum cans, there is a nonprofit group in Dickinson that's doing that work right now, and they've indicated a desire to be involved with what Mr. Prowse has outlined tonight. We can change our minds about that if we want, and the city can get into the collection of aluminum cans and therefore take the revenue from the sale of those aluminum cans. I don't really see a reason for us to do that right now if we've got a nonprofit. I would hope that we eventually, if we can find the right market, get to plastic at these sites as well as the other items that have been mentioned, but right now that doesn't look like that will happen immediately.
And then Mr. Kessel or Sean, does the city own any land available for that fourth spot? Have we identified a lot that the city would own as we do the other three that would be appropriate for the fourth location?
What we've tried to do through this recycling process is identify a land on each quadrant of the city, north, south, east, and west. We have sold virtually all of our land, so identifying another location on the west side may be a little more problematic than originally thought. We do have some on the southwest and a little bit on the northwest, but on the direct west, it might be difficult. We might have to partner with another agency to get that done.
Do we have anything in our rec center area? We're looking at the land development that we talked about for the outdoor pool and the empty land there. Do we have any spot available through Parks and Rec?
That's one of those partnerships that I think we can explore. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I know in Bismarck I see a site on school property. I see a site in Bismarck that appears to be on the property with a convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that generates some traffic for that convenience store.
In Fargo, they've located one of them at least on a school, and they share part of the revenue with the school itself.
I would think that we could take another run at Dickinson State. City has been pretty good to Dickinson State, and there's property over there that I think would be, ideal to this operation, and I've got to believe that we could work something out with them.
Mr. President?
Mr. Schneider?
Mr. Prowse, the DSU site you said was at the 600 block?
Yes, that was at the 600 block of
So
States
that's
Avenue.
farther north than where we had established the site years ago.
It would
We were in
be,
the southwest corner at that time.
yes, this would be very close to the DSU outdoor arena, right to the west of that, somewhere in that
But,
area.
I think that might be a concern of them, is having a collection site in that vicinity of the arena and those buildings there. We may have better luck if we move that south to the southwest corner of that area that DSU has.
Right by the Badlands Activity Center you're talking?
Nope. The southwest corner where you go into, yes, your Badlands Community Center, yes, you're right, to the southwest corner there. We had a site there established years ago.
Their biggest concern when I talked to them today on the phone was it was going to be unsightly for new recruitments and things to that order.
I think we can give you some help reasoning with them. I think, couldn't we, Mr. Kessel?
We certainly can.
I think we have some influence there.
Well, and if we do the fencing and the screened fencing, that takes care of a lot of the visual.
Commissioner Altman, that was one of their concerns, is putting any kind of permanent fencing up. They didn't they weren't supportive of a permanent fence. So making that site, well, let's suffice it to say we can continue those negotiations. I think we can make something work.
Mr. Prowse has done a great job on the 3 other sites at this point. I'm sure with a little help from Mr. Kessel, we can get that 4th site nailed down. So what you've requested, again, is how much in total?
Without fencing,
Without fencing?
it would be $107,000, $107,251. And
Okay.
with fencing, you are at $160,851.
Okay.
Also, keep in mind that the cost of the containers could have possibly went up. It was about 3 months ago when I got these numbers from them.
Okay.
So there may be
So could be
a
some
slight
changes there.
increase on the
All
container
right.
prices. That would be the only thing that would be a change.
Okay. If I'm reading our financial report correctly, we have nearly $385,000 in that fund. And I see that's different from, the previous year. So what is the funding source for that fund? How to? 'cause
The cardboard revenue
Is
could
that
be
what's
going
going
into
in
that
there?
fund. I don't know for sure if it's going into that fund or if
Okay,
it's
well,
going
here
into a
comes
general
Mrs.
operation.
Johnson, maybe she can help us. So, I mean, it's not just funds we set aside, this is a fund that does receive some revenue.
Correct. Well, right now, the only thing going in is interest, basically, on the
Interest.
cash balance. But in the past, we did have a 20-cent per account charge on the utility bills that was actually part of the refuse charge that they saw in their accounts.
Oh, okay.
But that 20 cents is no longer being transferred directly into it. That would basically be interest. And then, as Aaron mentioned, the cardboard revenues are also going in there.
The cardboard revenues do go in there,
Correct.
okay. I was going to say, if you gained $70,000 last year on just over $300,000, if you got all that from interest, I'm going to want to talk to you about investing some funds.
And you did 60,000 in cardboard recycling.
We did 60,000 cardboard. There's some revenue in there from the income received from tires also. That's a
Yeah.
possibility.
Okay.
And what that is we charge to accept tires, and then we also pay to dispose of them at these recycling
And there was a
centers.
profit margin there,
And there's
too.
a minimal profit margin, which could have also went to that fund.
Well, I think Mr. Jackson has, made a good point in that, since we're starting out doing this, maybe, these locations could change. Maybe the way to go is without fencing, but I think the commission should recognize that once we're comfortable where the sites are, they perhaps should be fenced, and fenced to the extent that Commissioner Altman was suggesting. But personally, I think it'd be reasonable just to start without the fencing and see how this goes. I'm in favor of doing it.
Did we consider paving these areas then?
No, we haven't looked at paving. What we were planning on using is a majority of crushed concrete, which after being driven on for a long time will turn into a
Because
soft.
when we did this, years ago, after a good rain, those things really turned into just a big rut. Trying to access the boxes and everything else tended to be pretty difficult in a couple of places there. And that's why I'm wondering what kind of surfacing we're going to be using.
Down the road, there may be an alternative to look at paving the sites once we get established sites that we're well satisfied with. As a temporary thing to make sure we have them located at the right area, we're probably better off going with just crushed concrete or crushed asphalt.
And you've got enough of that.
We have plenty on hand.
But if you go without the fencing, you could move a motion to authorize up to $115,000. That would cover you if you've had some inflationary increases, and then you wouldn't have to come back to us if.
Yes.
Aaron, what's your preference? Fencing, no fencing to begin with?
As right now, no fencing.
Can you
Down
feel
the road,
strongly
like I
about
said,
that?
as we get established sites and we know that's where they want to be, then we can look at doing some fencing for beautification processes.
Well, then I
So-
would make the motion to give Aaron what he wants and go with the mayor on 115,000 to begin with, and then take a look at the fencing situation, and the locations after that. Do we
And
need Colleen to clean that up a little bit? Or is it-
I think we're good on this one. I assume inherent in the motion is that it, it comes from the reserve for recycling projects. That's what we've been talking about, so.
Yes.
Yep. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, we have the motion second. Further discussion?
Mr. Prouse, you should have asked for additional staff since they're giving you what you wanted.
You're,
I guess, we
Yeah.
should have went one more step. Do we have another
Mr.
agenda?
Kessel, you're out of order. We'll proceed to vote on the motion then. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're the first guy to come up here on his first presentation and walk away with $115,000, you know. Okay, Mr. Soren, you want to take us through the rest of these?
Yes, President Johnson. The next item we have is the 2011 Sidewalk Improvement District. This is establishing the district for our sidewalk program. This is the program that annually we establish to allow people to voluntarily sign up for us to come in and replace and repair bad sidewalk, curb and gutter, and then special that back to their property. This program has been very successful. Continues to grow, and generally we're seeing carryover from it that we're unable to get all the projects done that people are signing up for. So I am asking the commission to approve the resolution creating the 2011 Sidewalk Improvement District.
Okay, and do we have a resolution number?
Mr. President, this would be 04-2011. I should note as well, the references in the text of the resolution are to 2010, and those should be 2011. So we will make that change in the event you approve the resolution.
Mr. President, I'll move to approve Resolution 04-2011 with the suggested changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have the motion, the second. Further discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
point of clarification, didn't we have an 04, Resolution 04 already?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe we used 04 on the north side annexation.
And that would have been the resolution number had you acted on the annexation resolution, but since that
Okay.
was not
Thank you.
addressed, this would be 04.
Okay.
Is there a dollar figure that is attached to this resolution?
Annually, we estimate about $60,000, but we typically don't put a limit because we special it back to the property owners. But that, based on our bids, that's generally what we're estimate on rough quantities.
I'm a user of this particular program in the past, and I found it pretty convenient for me.
All right, we have the motion and the second. We're ready, we'll proceed to vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
The next item we have is a final plat for you of the Lamont First Edition. This is a replat of the KDIX Tower Edition, which was platted. It was a one-lot subdivision. Through the past few years, we've seen it split off with a Taco John's going on a corner. Currently on this plat on Block 1, Lot 2 is where the Hampton Inn is currently being developed, and they were able to do that because it was a platted lot. This plat is an effort to try and clean that up, establish a lot for the Hampton Inn, creates the right-of-way for Sims to continue through the property, as well as 2 lots on the east side of Sims and one larger one behind where the Taco John's and Hampton Inn would be. Planning and Zoning's reviewed this plat and is recommending approval to the City Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soren. I'm assuming this is 05 then?
That's correct, 05.
Okay. So this is Resolution 05-2011. Are there any comments or questions on this one?
Mr. President,
Mr. Lambo?
I realize that I'm mixing apple and oranges on this regard because the whole thing is zoned CC, I believe.
That's correct.
But there is a concern among residents in the adjoining area on First Avenue East there, that there be a buffer zone of some sort that would protect the integrity of that R1, realizing that we're not talking about a zoning change here, that I just wanted to bring it to the attention and put it on public record that there is concern about having a transitional zone between the CC and the R1 in that area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lamblum. Other comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Lamboom, are you talking about the east side of First Avenue East?
I'm talking about the west side of First Avenue East, between there and the proposed Sims. There's 2 long blocks there. There's
Correct. But the residents would be on the east side of First Avenue East.
would be on the west side of First Avenue East.
Were the lots 1 through 12?
1 through 12 are on the west side of First Avenue East there. And they backdoor the Lamont First Edition there. But there's a row of trees in there which makes it a nice buffer at this point. But if there's any development that takes place that would encourage CC development there, the commercial development, then it's going to affect the integrity of the residential area. The only other way we have control over that, or those residents would have any input, would be through the building permit process, imagine. But the CC category covers quite a gamut, and we could have anything from a nightclub to, to, I don't know, to a dog kennel, I suppose, that would really kind of affect that residential area there.
Just a comment to that, I would add that our current zoning ordinance does have provisions for buffer between different zoning districts. And certainly as development would take place, we would have to look at that because we are going from a CC to a residential. And I can't recall if it's 10 or 20 feet in that scenario, and there's requirements within that, whether it's fencing, screening, items like that, that would be required, and we'd have to make sure that we stay on top of that, certainly.
Please. Also, then, it's notorious, the area is notorious for a high water table, is what we found with the development of putting the footings in for the Hampton Inn there. And I'd also be a little cautious, especially when we're putting in that new extension to Sim Street, that we look at the drainage that comes off that area, because it's an old swamp. It always has been a swamp, and it still acts that way.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Lamblum. Anybody else? Would there be a motion regarding this item?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
move to approve resolution, excuse me here,
05.
05-2011.
Right. We have the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 4-1. Item E then.
The next plat we have is a final plat for the North Industries First Edition. This plat, there was a North Industries edition that we previously had looked at and approved and is recorded. This plat, because of some of the potential purchasers, the land is trying to take into consideration the size lots that they're looking to do. A couple of changes that I point out in Block 2. Currently, you'll see there is 4 lots in that block. The previous plat had 6 lots in there, and Second Avenue East was farther to the west on that one. And then the other change that we have is with Blocks 5 and 6. You see on the previous plat, there was just, there was a street would have went between lots probably 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 of Block 6. That street has been removed. And First Avenue East has been moved slightly to the east in this plat. And that is working to try and keep those 2 bigger parcels intact up along Highway 22. They've got potential buyers that are looking to create a commercial front and then have some yard space in the back with that. We've taken this through planning and zoning and have reviewed it through several meetings, and we are recommending approval of the final plat of North Industries First Edition to the City Commission.
Okay, I'm assuming it's Resolution 6?
Yes, Mr. President, 06-2011.
Okay. You've heard the engineer's recommendation. Any questions or comments?
Mr. President, before we hear a motion on this, I'd just like to ask Mr. Coling, we had a development agreement first time around on this plat. The development agreement, the validity of that will not change with the replatting process?
Well, that's correct, Mr. Jackson. The development agreement remains in place and enforceable.
Okay. I'll move for approval of Resolution 06-2011.
Is there a second? We have the motion and the second. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
We do have a plat, it's called the Allard subdivision, it's a final plat. This one is located south of town. It's approximately a mile south of the city limits. It's bordered on the east side of it, has Decker's third subdivision, north of it is E&M addition, and west of it is the BW Walled subdivision and Decker's subdivision. It is a 9-acre, approximately 9-acre tract. The intent of the owner is to try and create 2 lots out of that for residential development. It is currently zoned rural residential. Through the platting process, we've acquired the right-of-way, remaining pieces of the right-of-way on the east side of this plat as well as on the south side, tying the subdivisions together. The one thing that was pointed out to me and we missed on this plat, there is a floodplain that goes through here. So we've looked at this, we're recommending approval, but I'm asking if it's approved contingent upon us getting that information added to this plat before it gets recorded.
So the motion to, if there's a motion to approve, it'd be a motion to approve contingent upon adding the floodplain information?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And I'm assuming this is 07?
07-2011.
Yep, okay. Any discussion?
The reason for the strange layout, the Lot 1 and Lot 2 running at a diagonal, is because it follows a drainage ditch?
I can't, I know it's because of how it lays for the current development. There's a house on a portion of this and how they want to split that out and how they're trying to separate that. So, based on natural features, that's why they've done that, yeah.
And the floodplain itself extends to the north?
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries.
And the last one I have is a final plat for State's 5th edition. This is west of 23rd Avenue. It's a continuation of the Roars development. Currently, they're building homes and apartments in the State 4th, which is along 4th Street. This is going to be to the north of that. It is a combination of R3, R2 proposed zoning. It does generate 31 R2 lots and one large R3 lot. The rezoning request will be coming in front of the commission at a future date, but it does follow the master plan that they've submitted for this area, and we're recommending approval of this plat.
Mr. Colling, it's 08 then?
That is correct.
All right. You've heard the engineer's recommendation. Any comments or questions?
I'll move for approval of 08-2011.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have the motion and second. Further discussion?
I just have a curiosity question. I see Walt Smith is in the audience here. Is the Beyond Shelter project that we heard about earlier this evening, is it located in Lot 1 of this proposed plat, or is it further north?
Just the first I heard about that this evening as well. Yeah, I'm guessing it's Lot 1, Block 1, or directly north of there, yeah. Maybe Shane Morris can directly, no, it'll be the next phase. Yeah, you'll be seeing another plat for State's 6th edition, I'm guessing in the next couple of months in front of you, and it'll be as part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Okay, we've been rattling through this. Do we have a motion on this one already? Okay, yeah, great. Any further discussion?
The dotted line that goes through Block 1 is a proposed future street?
It's actually a sewer main easement.
Excuse me?
Sewer easement?
Well, it's a sewer easement.
Yeah.
So
I gotta get my glasses.
Yeah, there's just a large sewer main that's heading through the development that's going to serve the hospital property up to the north there. It will serve this development as well, but its main purpose will be to hit that hospital property up north.
Okay.
North of Fairway.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Lamblum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Thorne?
Just based on the agenda tonight, I'd like to point out that we did conduct interviews for a planner, and I believe there's an offer on the table, and tentatively accepted, and it will be a welcome thing if we can close the deal.
Oh, good. All right, well then let's turn to the city administrator's very short report.
Thank you, President Johnson. I wasn't going to point out, but now I may. He's a little discombobulated tonight because it is his birthday, and although I have the face for radio, I don't have the voice, so I'll spare you the tune. But I do want to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you. I'd like to get out of here in time to have a birthday dinner, too.
I'll make the legislative update very brief then. We are tracking some very important legislation. Two of those related to special assessments and property taxes did fail today in the House, but they are expected to come back. The margin of victory was, as I will call it, it was one vote on each of those. So they are likely to be brought up tomorrow. As I understand it, they were not voted on again today. We also tracking House Bill 1458. This is the legislative option to funding for infrastructure funds for Western North Dakota or oil-impacted areas. That also got voted down by a much larger victory than one, and we don't expect to see that one again. We did actually testify against this proposal, as did many others. The North Dakota Oil and Gas Executive Board also opposed this legislation, and we are happy to see that it went down. 1013 is the alternate legislation. This is supportive of the governor's proposal, and that, I believe, passed today as well. So we're very excited to report those. Those were two bills that are highly important to Dickinson and oil-impacted areas in western North Dakota. The next item then is the Chief of Police retirement. I'm very happy to say that Police Chief Rummel has postponed his retirement date, currently set for March of this year. We are very excited to see that extension. It pains me to do this publicly and make those kind of comments, but in light of all of the turnover that we have had, especially in the retirements of our executive team and leadership team, I'm happy to see that postponement is going to take place. He has not given us an actual date yet, retirement. I'll ask his wife for that when time comes. The next item then is two additional Section 8 support letters, one for MDI Limited Partnership and the other for Pioneer Haven and Peaceful Haven. These are very similar to the ones that you approved earlier this evening. They allow tax credits to be, or at least the applications to be made to receive tax credits. They would be scored then independently, and so I've talked to all of the owners or projected owners of these projects. They all have said they encourage applications from our community. If you would see to it to turn this from a report into an action item, that would be wonderful. Not required, but certainly wonderful if you would do that this evening. The last item then is a thank you note from Domestic Violence.
Okay, so going up to these letters, you just would like the commission to move a motion in support of both of these?
That would be wonderful. I can give you some information on them. The Pioneer Haven and Peaceful Haven, those projects exist in our community. One's on the south side, one's on the north side. They are Section 8 housing today. What they're proposing is a revamping or refurbishment of those properties. They're going to spend several $million, about $30,000 a unit, to refurbish them and bring them up to today's standards. The other is another low-income housing project to the tune of around 36 different units, would be located on 15th, just adjacent to the drainage ditch that is to the west of the Elks Club. It'd be on the opposite side of the drainage ditch as the Elks Club is.
Would any commissioner care to move a motion supporting both of these projects?
I'll make that motion.
We have the motion by Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the second. Further discussion?
Is there any indication as to what's going to happen to the residents of these of the Pioneer Haven and Peaceful Haven if they come in with renovation?
That has not been, that's an excellent question, Mr. Landblum. I don't know. They've not provided us with that information, but it is something I can find out.
I think it's important to know that we're not trying to dislocate anybody, especially in a situation where we're just, going today, so if you would, please.
Do we know if there, on either of these projects, are there going to be any financial requests of the city?
Neither of these projects currently has any requests for financial funding from the city, at this time anyway.
Any other comments? I think what Mr. Landblum is asking before you actually send the letter, once you verify that we're not supporting displacement now that I'm elderly, of our elderly population. Okay, we have the motion. We'll proceed to vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Landblum?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Are there any city commissioner reports? Not. Are there any public issues? Any member of the public wish to address the commission? If so, step to the podium, state your name. There's no one.